Good afternoon, everyone. We're still waiting for the co-chair of the JCPC, si Congressman Velasco. Sabi niya 10 minutes na lang ho. Galing siya ng Marinduque. So 10 minutes na lang nandito na ho siya. So alright, magandang hapon po sa lahat. Good afternoon again. Welcome to the JCPC session. And before that, I'd like to, in behalf of the Senate, this JCPC is now convened.
On behalf of the House, this JCPC committee hearing is now convened.
Before we continue, let me direct the committee secretary to acknowledge our resource persons for this afternoon.
Good afternoon. I would like to acknowledge our guests and resource persons for today's public hearing. From the House of Representatives, we have Congressman Co-Chair Carlos Roman, Congressman Lord Alan Velasco and Congressman Carlos Roman Uybarreta. And we also have Congressman Antonio LTU, member at Teachers Party List. Congressman Ariel Casilao, member Anak Pawis Party List. And representing Congressman Carlos Isagani Zarate is Attorney Neri Colmenares, former member Bayan Muna Party List. For our guests and resource persons, we have from the Department of Energy, Secretary Alfonso Cusi. From the Energy Regulatory Commission, Commissioner Catherine Maceda, Commissioner Paul Christian Cervantes, Ms. Florcinda Digal. From the National Electrification Administration, Mr. Artis Nicky Tortola. From the National Power Corporation, Mr. Pio Benavides, the President. From the Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management Corporation, Mr. Arnold Francisco, Vice President. From the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, Mr. Mark Anthony Actub. From the National Transmission Corporation, Attorney Melvin Matibag, President. And Professor Waldo Del Mundo and Ms. Dina Dizon. From the Philippine Electricity Market Corporation, Attorney Oscar Ala, President, with Mr. Rauf Tan, Chief Governance Officer. From the Independence Electricity Market Operator, IMOP, Engineer Jose Marie Bigornia, with Mr. Robinson Descanso and Mr. Isidro Cacho Jr. From the Philippine Competition Commission, Mr. Kenneth Tanate, Executive Director, Attorney Cristina Free Condes, and Mr. Carl Adamag. From the Commission on Audit, Ms. Maria Lucila Fernando and Ms. Maria Teresa Yambao. From the Manila Electric Company, Attorney Ronald Valles and Mr. Lawrence Fernandez. From the Private Electric Power Operators Association, Attorney Ranulfo Ocampo. From the Developers of Renewable Energy for Advancement, Incorporated, Attorney Jay Layug with Attorney Richie Pilares. From the Philippine Independent Power Producers Association, Attorney Anne Estorco Montolibano. From the Aboitiz Power Corporation, Mr. Dennis De La Serna. From Team Energy, Mr. John Alcordo, President. From the San Miguel Consolidated Power, Mr. Warren Dalvis and Attorney Jojo Cabagio. Everyone has been acknowledged, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Comsec. Before we continue, I'd like to dedicate this last JCPC. This is probably the last JCPC meeting for the 17th Congress. I'd like to dedicate this to one of our colleagues who has been supportive and ever present in all the JCPC meetings, si Congressman Rodel Batocabe. Rodel is a very active member of the JCPC as well as the Committee on Energy, and sayang po dahil nung rini-review ko po yung transcripts, he was very active in the discussions on the ER-194. So I'd like to dedicate this last JCPC meeting in his behalf. So thank you. Again, to continue, upon the request of Yusek Wimpi Fontabella, we'd like to tackle first the easy part of this meeting. This is the request of the Department of Energy to approve several amendments to the IRR of EPIRA. There are two department circulars that will amend EPIRA. This is Department Circular 2018-03-005, titled Prescribing the Guidelines Recognizing the Rights of Indigenous Cultural Communities, Indigenous Peoples in their ancestral domain and access to the financial benefits as host communities under ER-1-94 program. And the other one is Department Circular number DC 2018-08-0021. The title is Providing for the Amendments to Rule 29 Part A of the Implementing Rules and Regulations of Republic Act number 9136. In behalf of the Senate, after reviewing thoroughly the proposals of the Department of Energy and the objective of the said proposals, definitely we want to empower and to give the benefits as quick as possible to the LGUs. And as we speak right now, there are about 12 billion outstanding benefits for the LGUs. And because of red tape and because of, is it 6? No, is it 6 billion to be released to the LGUs? And because of red tape and the complication of the process, this 6 billion is not being utilized by the local government units. So upon reviewing our discussion last time, and the use, no? Upon reviewing the transcript last time and also the submissions of the various resource persons, the Senate has no more questions and no more inquiries regarding this proposal. And I would like to also hear from our co-chair if ever there are any more questions regarding the proposal of the department.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the House, we join the Senate in its approval of the said supplemental request of the DOE. At the end of the day, sabi nga po natin, yung benefit to the host communities, talagang kailangan ibigay natin diretso sa mga local communities because those are one of the reasons kung bakit pumapayag sila in the beginning na tayuan sila ng power plant. Kung maiipit lang yung funding at hindi dadating sa kanila, parang yan yung nag-promise ka na papakasalan mo siya tapos biglang busted ka, edi ang sama ng loob. So eventually, if we're trying to push for a lot of power plants, yung mga ibang mga host communities, sasabihin lang nila, hindi naman nagkakatuot, bibigay nyo sa amin yung benefit. So definitely we're pushing for this. So, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, before we move for the approval of the twin proposals, let me just manifest and put on record a few items that we want the department to submit to us on a later date. No? Number one, the mediation procedure for the proposal. Number two, the liabilities of generation companies. Number three, time frame for the issuance of the audit report of the Commission on Audit. Number four, number of projects in the annual work plan that can be applied for at a time. Number five, financing of the annual work plan. And number six, possible removal of the host region from the list of beneficiaries. We will elaborate these manifestations through a communication to the department. Pag-usapan ho natin to, hahaba ho ng haba. No? But we will definitely put a lot of detail and a lot of description on these proposals to the department. But we want to manifest and put on record that the approval is subject to the submission of comments to these 6 proposals. With that, I would like to hear from any member an approval of the twin circular that the department is requesting from the JCPC.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve resolution, JBC resolution 2019-1. So move, Mr. Chair.
Any second?
Can I second? Second.
Any objection? Hearing none, the proposals to amend the proposals of the twin proposals of the Department of Energy through Department Circular Number DC 2018-03-005 and DC 2018-08-0021 is hereby approved.
We would like to thank the JCPC for approving the proposed circular that would really help deliver the money faster to the host community, and the host community will be able to make use of it. there are something like 6 or 7 billion that has been stranded over time. This money should have been used much earlier. So we hope now that with this circular, the host communities will be able to implement their projects timely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. With that, we can already dispense the one item in our, or item number 2 in our agenda. And now we go to item number 1. And the item number 1 deals with the power outages that we have experienced in the past few weeks. Last April 25, Mr. Chair, we had an extensive hearing on the causes of these power outages. I was joined by Congressman Kaloy Uribareta. We had approximately 4 hours of hearing talking about the power outages. And during that hearing, we heard from our various stakeholders different suggestions, and we also heard from our regulator and from the department an action plan moving forward in order to prevent power outages from happening in the next few months or even next summer, because summer is always the critical period in which we experience all of these brownouts. With that, I would like to go straight into the solutions, no? Because mahaba po yung pag-uusap natin doon kung bakit, and we all understand kung ano po yung nangyari, no? Now we want to go into the solutions and the timetable of the solutions. We also want to understand and appreciate how the solutions will be rolled out, when it will be effective, and what will be the impact of these solutions to the power industry, in particular the generating side of the power industry. ERC also manifested in, during the last hearing some reforms in the regulatory process, and we also want to appreciate that later on. And we also want to get some updates, Commissioner, on the fact-finding, no? Without going into detail, I know this is a very sensitive matter, but we want to know the timetable, no? Definitely this warrants a fact-finding activity. We owe this to the consumers. Our consumers perished and experienced a lot of inconvenience during the brownouts, and we owe it to them to educate them on the updates on the fact-finding activity. Today we're also joined by Congressman Nery Colmenares. He sent us also a very extensive analysis on what happened, and we're also joined by Congressman Ariel Casilao. And again, they also have extensive analysis on the brownouts and recommendations. Congressman Colmenares also has some recommendations that he wants to expound during the course of this hearing. With that, we will ask the Department of Energy to go straight into the solutions, and so that we will appreciate the department's initiative on preventing another series of brownouts from happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, DOE, from day one that we assumed the assumed office, we have been building capacity, and we would like our reserve to be increased from peak demand at least 25%. So that's what we have been building up, and as of now, our reserve is below that. So on the question of was there a reserve or an allowance for unplanned and planned outages, the answer is yes, because our grid code requires that we must have the dispatchable and contingency reserve. Now, we all know that what happened April 10 and April 11, when simultaneous outages happened and 1,500 megawatts were lost due to breakdown of plants. Now, we're building capacity. So how are we building capacity? We have been encouraging business, investors in the energy sector. From our visits in the different countries, we have been inviting investors in energy. The local investors are willing to invest, but as we know, under the IPIRA, all of all of the services, energies and under energy is in the hands of the private sector. In building capacity, the investors will not be willing to put up a power plant unless there is an assurance of offtake or a PSA. So the first action that we are doing is to invite investors in merchant plant. So merchant plant is something that is difficult to finance. No banks would require PSA to have a financial closure. So we were not able to get any investors locally to invest in merchant plant. The government would have been a good investor in merchant plant, so that the government can answer these things that are not seen. But unfortunately, the government is prohibited from going into generation. So what we did is we invited and we asked both Japan and China to invest to help us put up a merchant plant. And this is part of the MOU that we have successfully signed in China for merchant plant to be put up in the Philippines. They're looking of something like 600 to 1,200 merchant plant in the country. So what we said then in China is that instead of giving us grant, help an investor, fund an investor that would put up a merchant plant. So we were able to successfully convince them, and it is already in process. So that would help us build capacity. The ARCOA that has been pending with the Supreme Court, that there must be a resolution to that ARCOA, because that will give us the options, and this will give opportunity to other investors to contract directly with the end users and put up their power plant. We are reviewing the PSA. All the PSA are being reviewed. We have been discussing this with the GENCOs and the DUs. The DUs sign PSA with the GENCOs. Under that term, they are supposed to have a replacement power. There are allowable outages and not allowable. I mean, there is an allowable outages, and beyond that, there must be penalty. So we are reviewing all of this, and it is like that when you charter a vessel, that when you off-hire a vessel or when the vessel breaks down, there must be a replacement. So that's the same in power. I have been in discussion with Meralco on this, and I have been questioning them on their PSA and the replacement power, including insurance. So that should not be passed on to the public. I agree with you, and that is what we have been that's what DOE has been working on. On this PSA review, there are a lot of, there are a lot of issues there, because the PSA have piled up, and DOE is currently our legal is reviewing it. Because on the PSA, there is supposed to be a replacement power. So the question is, where will you get your replacement power? So there must be a continuity on the investigation, because what has happened is that the contract says that yes, there is a replacement power, but the question is, where will you get your replacement power? So these things are being addressed. Costers pay that we have been already embarked into and in the process of public consultation. May I see? May I refer on the other? Then on the ancillary services, the grid code, the transmission corporation, the transmission company should provide ancillary services. This has to be enforced, and we have been actually working on this from day one that we assumed office. Yeah, because it's the system operator has been entrusted with the function of providing ancillary services. This has to be enforced. So these are the few things that we have been doing, and capacity building is a very important objective. Now, on the transmission connectivity, there are powers that are already put up and ready to deliver. But unfortunately, for one reason or another, they are stranded because of transmission. A good example is in Negros. Okay. We have overcapacity now in Mindanao. The transmission line should have been the transmission line between Mindanao and the Visayas to connect to Luzon should have been installed. But for one reason or another, again, hindi po nagawa. So ngayon, yung pag-upo po natin, ginawa po natin, dapat yun, 2022 pa po matatapos, na pag-usapan po namin ng NGCP, that should be done end of 2020. So what does it mean? If we have that connection between Mindanao and the Visayas, we will be able to deliver the excess power to Visayas and Luzon. So yun po nangyari dito, kung may nasira man planta, nandun po. So it's a combination of generation, transmission, and distribution. Sama-sama po nating inia-address yun. So, in the end, ano po dapat nating gawin? And I think what we should do, and I'm going to submit it to the JCPC, I believe that it is high time that we revisit the IPIRA. Maraming salamat po.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Kong Kaloy, and then Kong Neri.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, you enumerated more or less 6 plan of actions. On the first one, meron man tayong policy as to the location of the plants that will be built. We have been observing na parang na lalamp up yata sa isang region lang yung karamihan ng planta at hindi natin na-farm out properly. What's the policy of DOE? Kasi if you mentioned yung interconnection between the Visayas grid and the Mindanao grid. If we have plants in our ample plants in the 3 major islands, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, then maybe this transmission problem will not be anymore that important. So that's one. Second is the type of plants that will be coming in. Kasi you mentioned auxiliary services earlier also as one of your 5th plan of programs. Pero hindi naman lahat ng planta are compatible for auxiliary services. So we have to pinpoint also, other than the location of the plants, we want to see also that the type of plants that will be coming in are properly reconciled with the need of our country. That's just on the first. Now, on the second one, yung ARCOA, and this has been pending with the Supreme Court. Ang problema ko dito, Mr. Secretary, is that if we are encouraging the distribution utilities to forecast their demand long-term, and para hindi sila nawawalan ng source of kuryente, we are asking them also to contract long-term. But pagka hindi natin inayos ng gusto yung ARCOA with this policy also, as far as the DUs are concerned, then we will end up having stranded contracts as far as the DUs are concerned. So we want this looked into properly, and the balancing act between having a longer contract and having stranded contracts because lilipat sila, especially yung malalaking loads. ng mga DUs, lilipat at didiretso na doon. And ito, nakakontrata sila ng 10 years or 7 years. Then that aspect needs to be looked into properly. Now, yung sa PSA, I think should properly be addressed ng ERC. I think they have plans on doing this. We support also the innovative move of ERC on coming up with additional ad hoc committees that will address this. But again, we have to be conscious also of the budget limitation of ERC. Dapat iano natin. And the empowerment also of their staff. Chairman Agnes enumerated earlier during the last hearing yung number of cases nila. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, sinabi lang kung ilang lawyers available for them. So all of this needs to be addressed also para naman maka-function properly yung ano. Now, on the auxiliary services, again, it goes hand in hand with the available plans and the type of plans that will be coming in for us para alam natin na etong planta na to can again address the need for auxiliary services. These are very important for us to be able to maintain the reliability and sustainability of our transmission lines.
Mr. Chairman, first, my apologies. I missed two important things that we are currently undertaking. One is the LNG terminal that would help boost the supply. I'd like to inform you that I have received the invitation already of Tokyo Gas and First Gen that the groundbreaking will be in May 29. So that would again help build capacity because component of that LNG terminal is a power plant. And on the PSA issue, thank you, Kong Oy Barreta, on the contract terms. We are studying now on the single single buyer market, no, where instead of the DU contracting the PSA from the GENCO, it is now what we would like to do is that the government contracts that the PSA and then distribute it to the different GENCO that would be needing it. Because now what's happening, the PSA is being contracted by the different DU. There is really difficulty in validating the cost, well, although it is subjected to CSP. But under the IPIRA, the GENCO can be part owner of the DU can be part owner of the GENCO that they are contracting with, up to 50%. So those are the things that we are looking at. And to answer the question on the location, where the merchant power plant, where they be located, we are studying now. The study shows one in the Visayas and one in Luzon. So there will be two merchant power plant that we are working to be built. And those are the locations that they have identified. But actually, where the specific location is a decision, is a choice and a decision of the investor. And this will be other things that will form part of the decision process will be the system impact study that will be coordinated with the transmission company, with the grid. So these are taken into account. But I'd like to inform the body that DOE is trying to build capacity, and we are technology neutral because we understand the urgency, the need to have a sufficient capacity. Now, it's also happening that some LGUs are banning or prohibiting establishment of certain technology in their areas, like coal, Like for example, Negros, I understand they passed a resolution prohibiting, so not in my backyard policy. But we cannot have a situation where there will be no, nobody will be willing to host this. So this is an area that we are studying. Maybe an establishment of an area that is really an energy city that would host certain technology. So that is the part of the study that we are working on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Kong Neri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat po sa imbitasyon, and I'd like to acknowledge that and thank the Chair, Sen. Sherwin, at mga colleagues ko sa Kongreso, kay Kong Lord Alan, at saka kay Kong Ibarreta, at saka kay Kong Kasilaw, at kay Secretary Cusi, at sa iba pang mga players na nandito. First, disclosures lang, so that you will know where I'm coming from. Isa po ako sa nagpetisyon laban sa Meralco noong 2013, power Malampaya shutdown, sa pinakamataas na dagdag singil sa kuryente ever sa kasaysayan natin. Mabuti po na TRO yan ng Korte Suprema at hanggang ngayon po pending yan. Second, isa rin po ako sa nagreklamo sa Korte Suprema laban sa 7 PSAs ng Meralco. At pangatlo, isa rin po ako sa nagpetisyon sa Korte Suprema para i-resolve precisely nabanggit ni Secretary Cusi na ARCOA issue. Para sa akin, ang ARCOA can lead to sanctions for airing DUs for that matter. Then, second point lang, Mr. Chair, well, as kung congressman ako, of course, I can ask directly from the resource person. I would love to do it, but since I'm no longer a congressman at hindi pa naman ako miyembro ng Senado, so I just have to channel my questions naman sa JCPC, no. So first slide please. Ready na ba yung slide? Just 7 slides lang to, Mr. Chair. Pero surprisingly, many of the points mentioned by Secretary Cusi were actually in my slides then. And those are the questions I'd like to ask. Kasi summer naman po ngayon ulit, the same routine, 2013, na wala ng supply na, election year na naman yung 2013, ngayon 2016 na naman. Many of these things seems to be a perennial problem. Expected naman sana natin na may summer palagi, parang wala pa naman akong naalaala po na may isang taon na walang summer, so nagugulat ako na hindi palagi tayo handa. Next slide please. Sabi po ng professor ko sa law schools, sabi ng professor ko sa economics sa San Beda College, if the demand is low and the supply is high, the price is low. Pero dito po sa statistics na nakuha namin, that supply is high, the demand is low, pero the price is high. 2016, 10,880 megawatts po yan. Ang demand ay 9,262. So ang margin ng supply at demand, 1,615 megawatts. Presyo, 2,947. By 2018 po, 12,562 megawatts ang supply, 10,497 ang demand. Ang supply margin is 2,065 megawatts umakyat. Pero ang presyo umakyat din po. So what gives? Isa po sigurong alamin ng JCPC, ano ba nangyari dito sa market economics natin? Bakit despite the increase in the supply-demand margin, tumataas pa rin ang presyo? Next slide please. This is a big problem po. Itong yellow po, yun ang yellow alerts eh. The black po is the one that are yung mga price, yung presyo ng kuryente. Ang blue po, yun po yung demand. Yung red ay supply po yan. So, ibig sabihin, never naman talaga na sumobra ang demand kaysa supply. Yun nga lang, nag-yellow alerts. Ang yellow alerts po, as far as I remember the briefing on us when we were part of the JCPC noon, ang yellow alerts po is not an issue of supply, it's an issue of reserve. But look at the price. The price of energy skyrocketing as if kulang ang supply. So I have this opinion, Mr. Chair of Congress, from both chairs of the JCPC, baka naman pwedeng pag-isipan, ipagbawal na itong pag-announce ng yellow alerts. Kasi nakukondisyon ng public sa higher prices pag na-announce yung yellow alerts na yan. Anyway, it's not a question of supply. It's a question of reserve. So why would prices be dictated by an issue na parang, kulang na ng supply? So, sa akin po, yun pong isang opinion ko dyan. Yung mga yellow alerts na yun, huwag na i-announce sa publiko kasi parang minamind condition ang publiko na tataas ang presyo just because there's a yellow alert. Next slide, please. Planned and unplanned outages. Alam niyo naman po, dati na naming position yan sa mga GenCos, dati na namin yan. No? I don't need to reiterate it. May contractual obligation ka to deliver electricity or DU for that matter, or NGCP for that matter. All of these players have contractual obligations to deliver electricity to us. Anyone who fails to deliver is their failure sa contractual obligations. Kaya bakit naman kami ang papasan nun? Doon po naman nagmumula yung causer's pay proposal ng ilan. Kasi in an ordinary contract as a lawyer, Mr. Chair, siyempre, pag nangako ka mag-deliver ng 100 kakahan ng soft drinks sa isang kasal, hindi ka naka-deliver kasi na-flat yung truck mo or whatever, it's your problem. Sasabihin nung nagkontrata sa'yo, problema mo yan. No, you look for something else or magbayad ka ng danyos perwisyo sa akin dahil walang nainom yung mga guests ko nung kasal ko. So, ang tanong ko po sa DOE, Mr. Chair, through the JCPC, ilang planta na ba ang nabisita ng DOE sa mga nag-forced outages? Kung meron man. But maybe we'll reserve the answer to that later para matapos ko yung points ko lang. NGCP. Actually, na-mention kanina ni Secretary Cusi. NGCP, may mga planta that can actually go online. Pero hindi sila makadispatch kasi may problema ang NGCP sa transmission. Sana NGCP dito. So, ibig sabihin, may supply pala tayo, hindi lang matransmit. Anong klaseng incompetence yan? Katulad sa Negros, and I cited Negros there, Visayas plants. Ang laki ng solar energy to, hindi matransmit, kalahati lang ang matransmit just because may problema sa transmission. So, ibig sabihin, wala palang kulang sa supply, hindi lang matransmit, ano ang mga plantang ito? And I'd like to ask NGCP later on those plants na hindi, kasi ang problema dito, Mr. Chair, bibilangin ni DOE yung installed capacity. Ngayon, hindi niya nililista yung sa installed capacity na yan, ilan ang pwedeng matransmit. Kasi nag-affect yan sa supply and demand eh. Kahit 20,000 po yung installed capacity, yung matatransmit lang pala, may evacuate lang pala ni NGCP, 12,000, o di kapos ka. Diba? So, parang akala mo, 20,000 yung installed capacity, o ang demand lang naman, 15,000, so okay tayo dyan, gano'n. Pero yung matransmit pala ni NGCP ay 12 lang. O di wala rin, Mr. Chair. Next slide, please. And I'd really like NGCP to answer that, no? Sabi ni Chair De Venadera ng ERC, 85 unapproved PSAs with up to 4,500 megawatts. Pahingi po ng lista niyan, yung 85 unapproved PSAs. At ano ang dahilan, ba't di pa sila na-approve? Tapos sana maaral ng DOE, dyan sa 85 PSAs na yan, yung bagong matrix ng cross-ownership. Saan dyan yung DU na nagmamayari ng planta sa 85 na yan? Kasi I'm always allergic to cross-ownership. And if my opinion ko, in the IPIRA, dapat na pagbawal yan eh. Pero naisingit yan sa last minute eh. So that's also another point I'd like to raise. At sa Meralco na lang. Yung 7 PSA ng Meralco, kung sana pina-CSP nyo na dati, hindi matagal na na-approve yan. Tapos ngayon somebody say, kasi hindi pa na-approve yung PSA, kaya ganito tayo ngayon. Pinag-bid nyo na lang sana. Ano bang masama sa bidding? Ano bang masama sa bidding? Ang PSA na gustong pa-aprobahan ng Meralco is about 5 peso 25 per kilowatt hour. Pero ang market, 3 pesos lang. Ba't naman kami papayag sa PSA na 5 piso yung per kilowatt hour yung presyo, 3 pesos nga lang market ngayon. So yun po yung naghihintay ba ang Meralco ng isang favorable Supreme Court ruling in next week or in the next 2 weeks? I-abandon na kaya yung opposition dyan sa PSA na yan at ibidding na lang natin yan. Kung manalo pa rin yung 7 PSA ng Meralco dyan, well and good. At least pumasa sila sa CSP. But I see no moral, legal, and even whatever justification, bakit i-insist na hindi dumaan sa bidding yung kontrata ng Meralco dyan? Hanggang ngayon, except, nakahabol naman kami sa deadline. It's not the reason, Mr. Chair, para sa akin. CSP ang rule, di CSP natin, just to be fair to everybody. Next slide, please, Mr. Chair. Sabi ng Transco, may 8 brownouts this May. So sabi ng DOE, merong humihingi kayo po, Secretary Cusi, if I remember right, meron kayo humingi ng longer holiday. Dapat itanong natin mamaya kung anong sagot ng COMELEC. Kasi longer holiday means, what about kung holiday sa May 13 of 2019 election, i-holiday pa natin yung May 14 kasi may canvassing yan eh. Ang problema natin pag may election tapos nag-brown out the next day, canvassing ang problema natin. In fact, kung ako lang ang tatanungin, mula sa Sabado, wala na dapat talaga, Sabado, Linggo, talagang safe na muna ang energy supply natin. A longer holiday. I-explain na lang sa mga employers, national interest yung at stake dito. Of course, sabihin ng employers, magbabayad kami holiday. Pero pag nag-peak ang demand na naman at talagang nagka-brownout sa during the canvassing stage or even the election stage, ang laking gulo po niyan. Ang laking gulo po sa midterm elections po niya. Not just the national, but even the locals na kung saan may election. So what about May 13, May 14 holiday doon during that time, no? Para naman not only, siyempre, it's favorable sa workers, but the more important reason is, i-secure natin muna itong electoral exercise natin sa May 13. Next slide, please. I think I'm in the last 2 slides. Anong proposed solutions ko? 85 PSAs po, aksyonan na kaya natin po yung PSAs na yan, kung sakali man. Aksyonan na ng DOE yan. No? Kasi, without prejudice doon sa aking request, na pakilista muna anong capacity, tapos yung cross-ownership po. Matukoy natin yung cross-ownership sa mga PSAs na yan. Tapos sa PEMC, Mr. Chair, I'd like to suggest, parang, correct me if I'm wrong, pero hanggang ngayon, matapos namin sinampa ang kaso sa Korte Suprema noong 2013 on the allegations of collusion within the generation companies during the Malampaya shutdown, as far as I know, hindi pa defined ng PEMC and the independent operator kung ano ang market abuse, kailan mangyayari ang collusion. For example, a distribution utility, may mga planta siya, tapos net sellers sila. Ano sa bidding behavior niya ang magko-constitute na market abuse? Kung ma-define niya ng PEMC, at least malaman natin kung itong mga jump in prices na questions ng oversupply is an abuse of market power or is a legitimate reason for the increase in price. So, Mr. Chair, sana mahingi sa PEMC na ma-define na yung parameters kung kailan may collusion, kailan wala. Otherwise, hindi natin alam kung anong nangyayari, bakit tumataas ang presyo pag sabay-sabay na nag-shutdown yung mga GenCos. Tapos sa NGCP, of course, concerned ako sa renewable energy. Sana matapos na yung pag-link ng RE sa grid, no? With of course, the implementation of the renewable portfolio standards, no? So sana naman ma-pursue na yan. But more than that, I'd like to put to task, I'd like to allege here, and in support of Secretary Cusi's point, I'd like to allege here, ng NGCP, wala kayong capacity to transmit all installed capacity. Hindi nyo kaya yan. Yung tagal-tagal nyo na po dyan eh. Tapos hanggang ngayon, hindi nyo kaya na i-transmission yung installed capacity. Naghahanap tayo ng supply, may supply naman pala, hindi nyo lang matransmit. Ang problema dito, for a long period of time, nakafocus po ako sa GenCo at sa DU. Hindi ko napapansin yung NGCP. Ngayon po napansin ko na eh. Kasi taga Negros po ako eh. I know about the solar whatever, ignominy in Negros na nangyari dyan. So, yun po, DOE should order NGCP to address its incapacity to evacuate plants that can actually go online. NGCP must be transparent naman dito sa role niya sa shortness ng supply. Kasi may papel pa lang NGCP dito eh. Yung grid may papel dito. Next slide sa proposed solutions. Ito sa Meralco, advice lang naman to. I'm not the Supreme Court naman who can order you. Siyempre, bilang one of the petitioners, I really hope manalo kami dun. Pero yung 7 PSA nyo, i-withdraw nyo na kayong objection nyo doon. Tapos, i-CSP na po natin yan. Unless may magandang justification ng Meralco mamaya sa hearing na to kung bakit hindi kailangan i-bid yan, when in fact, ang sinasabi ko kanina, mas mataas ang presyo sa PSA nyo kaysa sa market price. But even if, sabihin nyo hindi, mas okay yung sa amin, still, ibid mo. Malay mo, may mas mababa pa na mag-CSP dyan kaysa sa ibang mga plantang na yan. No? Sana i-withdraw nyo na yan. Pangalawa, I'd just like to add on to this, mag-object na rin sana, i-withdraw na rin sana ng Meralco yung objection niya sa ARCOA. Kasi yung ARCOA po, ang isang function dyan, pagbibigyan mo ang consumers na pumili ng kanyang supplier, at least mapipinalize yung supplier na nagba-brown out o mataas ang presyo. O mataas ang presyo mo, nagba-brown out ka lagi, hindi ka naman makakasupply, dito ako sa kabila. Sa ngayon po, captive tayo eh. Kaya pag sinabi na ganito ang presyo, wala ka nang magawa eh. Yun dyan lang si Meralco. And I also would like to urge the Supreme Court, katagal na po ng ARCOA petition na yan. Aksyonan nyo naman. Ako naman, manalo po kami dyan. Tanggapin ko na po yan. Basta, desisyon na ng Supreme Court, yung isang importante na batas katulad ng ARCOA. So I'm really surprised why it's a very simple case, why the Supreme Court is taking a long time to resolve that case. And of course, we reiterate our previous position, ng sinabi ko kanina, ng investigation sa GENCO. Last slide, please. Nakalagay dyan, nationalized power industry. Matagal na po naming posisyon yan. Mga long-term namin po yan na mga posisyon noon pa. In fact, I have proposed na panahon pa, magkasama pa kami ni Senator Sherwin sa Congress siguro. Ang ipira po dapat sa amin, basura yan. Let's build a new law for the energy sector. Ngayon ito po, Mr. Chair, if you allow me, I'd like to ask this directly kay Secretary Cusi. Kasi nagulat ako dun sa one buyer concept kanina. Ang initial ko po na impression, mukhang maganda yan di ba? Kasi I've always fought for government intervention. Ang problema po, may EPIRA. Can you do that po with the EPIRA in existence? Yung one buyer concept kanina, a single buyer market na nabanggit nyo, na kung saan gobyerno ang bibili ng mga supply, tapos i-distribute niya sa kung sino mang DU. So siguro that's my last point, Mr. Chair, and I reiterate the question, and I thank the Chair for allowing me this opportunity to express the consumer side naman na mga points on the issue of the recent energy fiasco that transpired. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kong Neri, and I know for a fact that you've been a champion of consumer welfare and consumer protection. Hindi lang naman po elektrisidad yung inyong binabantayan, kundi tubig and even other utilities. And we really appreciate that because we need to give a strong voice to our consumers, no? And even a stronger voice, no, in the halls of the Senate and Congress. So thank you very much for joining us here in this hearing. We'd like to also recognize Congressman Casilao.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before Secretary Cusi will answer all the inquiries and questions of our colleagues, I would just like to add up some clarificatory questions. One, Secretary Cusi, you made mention that 2 merchant power plants in China is willing to invest. Was this a result of the recent Belt Road conference attended by the Philippine government? Or was this deal was made long before the conference? Just take note of the questions first.
That request from China was made the first time that we visited China in 2016. That was the time that I manifested with the National Energy Administration of China that of our needs, and we need to build power plants immediately, and I requested for a merchant power plant. Because if we give PSA, everybody would, I don't need to be inviting or soliciting. Everybody will be wanting. No? But this is something without PSA. So we requested that to be factual about this during that visit in 2016. Then after that, in 2017, we signed an MOU. They made a study. They came here, and all the process is being undertaken. And during this last visit by the President to China, everything was firmed up and the details are being worked on.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Secretary Kusi, and I formally request the committee for Secretary Kusi to provide this committee for the copy of the MOU. Second question, Secretary, is ilang load po yung kinumit nila na ma-deliver itong dalawang merchant plants?
Well, they are looking between 300 to 600 per location. They're looking at Visayas, specifically in the area of Cebu, and another one here in Luzon. So, as I've said, the specific choice of location is dependent, is their decision.
What are the nature of the plants? Coal, renewable energies?
It is your call, Your Honor.
And if these plants are established, they form part of the PSAs, correct?
No, sir. This will be an available supply that will be put into the electricity market and will be there upon demand.
Now, I agree with the Secretary, Mr. Chairman, that the need, in fact, I am one with the Congressman Colmenares in calling out in the previous Congresses until the present for the repeal of EPIRA. And not only that the power industry has been a big monopoly now, but also with the provisions allowing a monopoly between the generation up to the distribution. And in fact, even the transmission has been included in cahoots with the so-called monopoly. Now, again, the question of Congressman Colmenares with regards to the possibility of government taking its role as the one distributing or as the one acting as to buy from the PSAs and decides who to sell to the distribution utilities. And if there is no provision, and I cannot remember any provision of the existing law under the EPIRA that could be possible for that proposal. So that recommendation could be an act of Congress to immediately act on an amendments, or in fact, if that will be a favorable opinion from our colleagues, we might as well recommend for a more pro-people, more pro-consumer power industry law that will govern, limit monopoly, limit greed to profit at the expense of the rights and welfare of our consumers. And hopefully, the Secretary, the Department of Energy, would be one in our journey to achieve such objectives. And Mr. Chairman, for my last question, wala na po tayong talagang aasahang problema sa hinaharap in terms of supply, because we have a stable supply. What we are considering now is not to run out of our reserves. But there is, I don't know if the DOE is within my same wavelength, that we have the same idea that we are guaranteed of a stable supply. Despite the problems we are facing now, but the DOE can assure the Filipino people that we have a stable supply. What we are considering and ensuring now is that in any case that our supply goes down, that will endanger the possibility of higher demand and lower supply, we have enough and ample reserve to provide so that no blackouts will be experienced by the people. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, gusto ko lang sana kunin yung opportunity to the last hearing na natin to sa JCPC. So, being part of the JCPC in the Energy Committee in Congress, talaga nakita ko parang ang laki talaga ng impact na ginagawa ng energy sa ating bansa. So with the recent mga yellow alerts natin at red alerts, I joined sila Sir Neri Colmenares sa kanilang mga pinaglalaban. Definitely, napaka-importante ng energy. Nakakapagtaka talaga because all along we were assured na meron tayong stable power supply, tapos biglang the next day, nagkaroon tayo ng yellow alert. And then nagkaroon tayo ng red alert. Ang pinagtatakaan ko lang talaga, Secretary, we've been here for 3 years already. 3 years na. Every year naman, talagang tama si Sir Neri, may summer tayo, nagpipeak talaga yan. Umiinit, mas lumalakas gamit ng kuryente. So, pinagandaan sana natin. I'm sure you've done your job, but I'm putting you into task and the whole energy family. Siguro, whatever we're doing, parang kulang. Sorry to say. I'm very concerned, parating na po ang elections. Alam natin, pag nagkaroon ng brownout dyan, it's mapuput into question yung credibility at yung integrity ng elections. Ayaw po natin yon. Lalong-lalo na po, lamang po ang, sorry Sir Neri, lamang po ang hugpong ng pagbabago candidates namin para sa senatorial balls. I don't want that to be put into question. So, siyempre kasama natin si Boss Neri. But ang sinasabi ko lang, let's make this election naman unquestionable. Very important para sa ating bansa. And also, ang sabi ko nga, etong hearing natin, it's going to be a lot of finger pointing. Sino ba may kasalanan? GENCO, TRANSCO, DOE, TRANSCO, ang transmission, ang system operator. Ang dami may kasalanan, ERC. But, at the end of the day, ako ngang suggestion ko lang, one, build capacity. Totoo naman dagdagan natin ang power plants. Ayaw nyo magkaroon ng yellow alert, ayaw nyo magkaroon ng red alert, damihan natin ang generation companies. But we have to understand, bago magiging online yung mga yan, it will take you 5 years, 6 years. And that is why I am very happy to be part of this JCPC and Energy Committee with Senator Sherwin and our colleagues. Dahil there are a number of laws that we were able to pass na we really believe at talagang tinutukan namin to be able to address these problems. And one of those is the EVOS, yung one-stop shop natin, yung virtual one-stop shop. This would shorten the period of permitting. So I'm putting to task DOE dahil yung IRR na lang yata ang hinihintay natin doon. Next, other than building capacity, I think the more important thing that we have to understand dito sa ating bansa, alam ko naman, pag pumupunta tayo sa ibang bansa, napapansin natin, especially in European countries, pagpasok mo sa isang establishment, madilim. Pagpasok mo sa loob ng pinto, umilaw. Energy conservation. I think it's more of us going into a policy of teaching everyone how to conserve energy. Kanina, nasa Starbucks po ako. Pasok po ako sa CR. Walang kuryente. Hinahanap ko yung switch. Biglang bumukas. Sensor. So, ibig sabihin, if that bathroom wasn't used for 3 hours, tapos nakabukas lang yung ilaw, di nagsayang lang tayo ng electricity, di ba? Kung naka-sensor yun, yung 3 hours mo, nakasave ka na nung kung ilang wattage yung meron na yun. So what am I saying? I'm giving in simple solutions. Pero sa tingin ko, it should be a policy of DOE to enforce all of this in all government offices, sa national, sa local. Pag pinagsabay-sabay natin yan, sa tingin ko yung demand natin for electricity will go down and all the private companies to follow suit. Di ba? Pumunta ako sa isang hotel, yung hallway nila doon sa mga rooms, ang dilim. Pagpasok ko, sensor, nagkailaw. So can you just imagine the amount of electricity being used nang wala namang gumagamit? I think, kasi right now, alam naman natin every year, tumataas yung demand natin for electricity, especially with Pangulong Duterte's Build program. Sobrang lalakas yung demand natin yan. So, while we're trying to get a lot of installed capacity, para mag-supply sa atin ng electricity, why don't we look at energy conservation? And for Meralco to also push for the net metering. Kasi sa tingin ko, a lot of the houses would love to put a lot of solar panels in the house. Tapos benta natin sa grid. It's already a law, and I think we have to focus more. Parang kasi wala akong masyado naririnig rito sa net metering. But yun lang yung sa akin. I don't want to point fingers kasi kung may kasalanan ito, kasi it's not going to do anything. Ang gusto ko sana for DOE to look into energy conservation. Magano tayo? Let's do a national campaign. Teach everyone how to conserve energy. And you will see, ang laki ng bababa ng demand. Yung reserve mo, di kayang-kaya. Hindi tayo, boss, magkakaroon ng yellow at red alert. At the end of the day, coming in next Congress, feeling ko naman I'm gonna win. I hope I have wala ba? I hope I'll still be part of the Energy Committee. Kasi nga, tama naman, for next Congress, gusto ko sana mag-focus lang talaga on amendments. What amendments? Amendments on all our existing laws. I think Congress should stop making new laws and start looking at all the old laws and amend everything. Put to task all the oversight functions para ma-check natin. Repeal na rin natin. So, yun lang, Sec. I was just happy to be given this opportunity kasi gusto ko i-push talaga in energy conservation. And I think that will solve a lot of our energy problems in this country. Kanina, tinatanong natin yun dun sa NGCP. Yung sa Negros, boss. Tinatanong natin yung sa solar power. Sa tingin ko, before, nung pagkatapos na construct yung solar company, I don't think we can fault NGCP. Why? I-fault natin DOE. Bakit? Bakit mo pinayagan magtayo na 450 megawatts sa Negros? Alam mo naman pala walang transmission line. 'Di ba? Ang alam ko originally 50 megawatts 'yon. Tapos tatayo mo ng 40 megawatts, hindi naman kaya nung load nung transmission line. So you have to construct. And to construct the transmission line, it would take years. But how many years have already passed? I don't know kung nakapagtayo na ang NGCP. So now, we can fault them for not putting it up. But during that time, we cannot fault them. We can fault DOE. And that goes back. Yung una kong sinasabi talaga during our energy committee, suggestion ko for the DOE, I'm sure inisip nyo na to, pinpoint locations all over the country. Just don't say, pag may nag-apply sa inyo, pinunpay rin ng aking colleague si Kaloy, pag may nagsabi siya, apply kami, tayo kaming power ng generating company rito sa province na to. And knowing, tad-tad na pala ng mga generation companies doon, nag-oversupply ka doon. I want DOE, if I may suggest, pinpoint already in the whole country areas where we can put up generating plants, power companies. Bakit? Para well-balanced tayo. 'Di ba? Kunyari, lahat na andito. Isipin mo, babato ka pa hanggang, kunyari, tayo mo lahat sa Visayas, babato ka pa hanggang dulo ng Northern Luzon. Oh, transmission cost pa, bababa. Tapos yung transmission voltage, meron pa yan. Ipapower pa ng generation company yung transmission voltage para tumas, para mabato mo doon. If you distribute it properly all over the country, di ang ganda nung balance ng pagbato natin ng energy. I'm no expert, but those are just my simple solutions. But in conclusion, boss, sorry natuwa lang kasi ako pupush natin yung energy conservation. Yun lang, Secretary Cusi, with the DOE family, I hope you go into a national campaign to teach everyone to conserve the use of electricity para mawalan tayo ng problema. And definitely, I am waiting for a solution para ngayong midterm election. Definitely, we're not supposed to have any brownouts. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, just a short, in support of my chairman in the House of Representatives. One of the things that we really work hard for on both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, is the passage of the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. And I would like to take this opportunity that the JCPC should adopt a resolution enjoining or encouraging the President to sign the law that we have already passed. Yes. Na-sign na? Kailan? Okay. No, I think it's one of those that we are really looking at sinusundan po namin at hindi pa po no, the EBOS has already been signed. That's the latest as far as the energy sector is concerned. But the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act, we are still waiting for the signature of the President. And if we can, through this hearing, na ilabas natin that there's really a need for us to have a national policy regarding the efficiency use and reasonable use of energy and conservation policies. Tayo lang po ang napag-uulihan dito po sa Southeast Asian countries. We're the only one left without an energy conservation law. So I think my two chairmen here will support me in encouraging the President to sign into law yung pinaghirapan naman po namin na mapasitupad po yung Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act.
Yes, Secretary.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just to on the points raised, I agree with the Chairman Velasco about the points that he raised, that where to put all the plants. Yes, and I would say yes, that is being done. We have the transmission development plan every year, and where to locate that, the plants and including the load. Now, on the approval, where to put them, DOE does not just approve an application, even if they have a complete financial study. There is a system impact study that they have to complete, and that has to be done in coordination with the DU and the grid. So for those plants, that's why we were blaming this, for these power plants that were stranded. I call them the stranded supply. When they put there, in fact, I'm blaming, how come that you put it there, and how come, and saying, you know, the transmission development plan has not been followed. So that we are asking. And in fact, that is an issue with us, that the transmission development plan, in fact, the 2019 transmission development plan, I did not sign. Okay. So that's just to correct some misunderstanding on how we approve a power plant. It has to have a system impact study. Any plant must have a connection to the grid before we issue them the service contract. Now, on the energy efficiency, we are with you, Chairman Velasco, on the energy efficiency. And in fact, this has been going on. And this is a program of DOE that is we are pursuing. And we are very active in the preparation of the law. And if with or without the law, we are doing this. And PCOO has been helping us inform the public. But I agree with you that we should continue educating. You know, even in the testing of the bulbs, the appliances that is being undertaken by DOE, to make sure that people are advised of what consumption does, let's say, electricity, a refrigerator or an aircon consumes, and give them all the choices. So we are doing that. And then on the EVOS, and the EVOS has been signed into law, and we are actively doing the IRR. The rates, the studies, the same questions that we have. We are reviewing the rates. We are unbundling the rates. We are unbundling even the transmission charges. That we have done that in coordination. We have asked the ERC to unbundle the rates of transmission. So that we'll see including the ancillary charges that are being imposed to the people. Capacity, energy capacity, as I've said from the very beginning, is a concern that we are building. Now, we are not building capacity for now, but we are building capacity to support the build program that we have. So we know what our forecast requirement for this, and including the the consumption program, and that is what we are doing. The capacity is very important to us. On the question of rates, we are with you. DOE is looking at it from the people's interest. That is the concern of the President. And the President has mandated us to put people first. And that is what DOE is doing. But of course, we cannot just ignore also the plight of the different industry players. They must be able to continue to serve. So on the issue of why the price is high, even if the supply is high, there are other factors that are in play that is being looked into. The spikes. We are even looking in 2014 when Malampaya went offline. I believe that there were something like 10 million that was passed on to the consumers. We're looking into that. And in fact, in saying is that in the same on the PSA, we are looking at the replacement power. So if there is a replacement power provision, that should not be passed on. And that is pending, I believe, Kong Colmenares.
Mr. Chair, just clarification. There's 10 billion passed through the consumer when more or less.
In my amount, my estimation, but that is something that bothers us. Why, when Malampaya went on maintenance, the replacement fuel, the increase in the price is being passed on. So in fact now, we are looking at Malampaya maintenance as saying that cannot be passed on if or the fuel price difference.
Yes.
So rest assured that DOE is looking into that, and the welfare
And maybe,
of the people is
and maybe, Mr. Chair, kung pwede, kasi na-raise naman ni Secretary Cusi, Meralco can be asked, na TRO namin yung pagdagdag singil na yan. Meron ba kayong nasingil na doon, yun ang itatanong po sa Meralco, may nasingil na ba doon na hindi nahabol ng TRO, and if so, magkano? At na-refund nyo na ba? Yung ganun po siguro. Kasi kung may 10 billion na na-pass through sa consumer despite the TRO, of course, I will file a supplemental pleading sa Korte Suprema to complain about such non-fulfillment of the restraining order of the Supreme Court. Thanks, Mr.
And just to continue, and then on the PSA, the approval of the PSA is not with the DOE. It is with the ERC because of the process. Now, on the investigation of the power plant, whether we look and appraise the condition of the power plant, yes, we are doing that, and in fact, we have tapped the Philippine Association of Mechanical Engineers to help us. What we would like to do is to engage the services of a third party to really check on the condition of the power power plant. On the ARCOA, yes, that is a TRO has been issued because ARCOA was made mandatory. We went around it, and DOE revised the mandatory and made it voluntarily with the risk of being held in contempt. But unfortunately, there are some issues that are being on the applicants of the RECs with the ERC. But DOE made it already voluntary so that even with the TRO, we can move forward. And as I've said, that is, we did it even with the risk of being held in contempt. Now, on the power supply, in fact, early this year, the application of TMO. A TMO is owned by Aboitiz to delist a 200 megawatt power plant was approved by DOE. Why was it approved? Because there was no taker. In 2018, September, we gave Meralco and TMO the exemption on the CSP so that they can negotiate on the PSA, temporary PSA. But Meralco did not, and the Aboitiz did not sign it. So that's the reason for the delisting. That is 200 megawatt. There was also an available supply, Millennium, that is around 100. That's another 100 capacity. So I'm happy to say that these power plants that were not in the system before is now back into the system. So that would help improve our supply for the coming days. And also happy to report that in the Visayas, there is an additional capacity that was added, the 170 megawatts of what power plant? TVI. So those are the thought. All told, there is that 470 capacity that was not there prior to April 10 and 11.
If I may, Mr. Chair. Please. So itong mga capacity po, Secretary Cusi, in terms of transmission, pwede na to. Yung binanggit nyo kanina na, ano ba yon? Yung
TMO, nasa nabotas lang po.
TMO, okay. Millennium, pwede na rin, walang problema sa transmission capacity.
It was being used before. They
Okay.
were supplying before. They were just delisted because of contract agreement.
Okay, so yung TV...
No off-taker. That's a better word. No off-taker. So if there is no off-taker, that means there is supply, but wala lang kumuha.
So yung pangatlo, ano yung pangatlo? TV...
TVI sa Cebu po
May
yun.
transmission capacity rin
Wala
yan?
pong problema yon.
Walang problema. So mayroon palang supply ho na ayaw lang ni Meralco ikontrata na bilhin. In the sense, I mean, if I get from what you're saying, tapos ngayon, dahil kinapos ng nag-yellow alert, kami ang magbabayad ng dagdag na presyo na when in fact there could have been supply pala. Is that correct? Is my understanding correct, Mr. Chair?
No, ang kwan po nun, ng Meralco did not sign it with the TMO because according to the way, I mean, my understanding is that they have enough supply. So, on
So
the
nagkamali ang Meralco
the issue
po.
of supply was there a supply because they're saying is that in the first previously people were saying there was no enough supply. And saying no, there is enough supply. In fact, I have to delist the plant.
That's very earth-shaking. So isa may supply pala na gustong i-offer, ayaw lang bilhin ni Meralco. Mr. Chair, kasi baka naghihintay si Meralco ng
In
ano.
fairness naman po sa Meralco, as a DO, in fairness to them, when they look at the supply, there was really a supply. And then they say that TMO must be, it's not needed. But unfortunately, the breakdown of the 1,500 megawatts that was lost made things different. So, kaya we cannot also just arbitrarily or conclude nakapagpabaya. Nahirap naman po yon. Ang sinasabi lang natin dito is kaya inimbestigahan natin ano ang nangyari, bakit yung 1,500 na yun nawala sabay-sabay. Katulad po siya sa spare tire ng gulong, kahit dalawa, kung apat yung na-flat, talaga tirik tayo.
Thank you. Attorney Melvin, you have anything to share?
Just addition to what Secretary mentioned, because with all due respect to Chair Velasco, I will take exemption in clearing NGCP on this fiasco, so to speak, by Mr. Colmenares. The one in Negros, it was approved during the time of the previous administration. There was a raise to 500. But we have to remember, even before DOE at that time approved the power plants to go online, there is the SIS, the System Impact Study, which is approved by NGCP. Ibig sabihin po nito, ang NGCP sinabi, okay, pwede, makakatransmit tayong kuryente. So if somebody should answer a lot of questions here, it should be NGCP. That's why I'm very happy with Attorney Colmenares saying na nakapokus ako sa distribution tsaka sa GenCos, nakakalimutan ko yung transmission. Tama po yun. And I will be happy na we made a lot of study, 2 years time in Transco. Ang dami na po namin nakita na dapat na itama para hindi po mangyari yung mga ganito. And in fact, in fairness to DOE, since day one, they've been asking NGCP to explain sa transmission development plan, ano ba yung reserve ninyo, may mga reserve. I think, when you mentioned kanina sa slides nyo, Attorney Colmenares, binasa nyo po siguro yung report ng Transco and it's all there. And we will be happy to share it to you and to the public because nakakahiya naman po sa publiko na maghihiring tayo ng mga brownout. We are just giving excuse ng mga boiler leak, ganyan. I think the public deserves more. And one of the group that should answer those questions is NGCP. Thank you.
The kind indulgence of my co-chair, since what we experienced in the past ay mga problema sa GenCos, no, sa generating companies, we are focusing on that, no? But that doesn't mean that we are not focusing on the bigger picture, no? Which is the other components of the power sector, the transmission being one of the most vital. And on a separate session, co-chair will invite again DOE and Transco to enlighten us on the transmission development plan and where we are, no, on the transmission development plan, because you have supply but you need to transmit it. But the transmission investments are guided by the transmission development plan. Ngayon, nasaan na tayo pagdating dito sa transmission development plan? But on a separate note, mahabang usapan ho yan. We also want to hear from ERC regarding the reforms that they are thinking of implementing. And Kates, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairs. Chair Agnes sends her apologies because she's ill today, but she sent the whole contingent of the commissioners here at this afternoon's meeting. We have a quorum today. Kami po ay relatively mga bago ho sa ERC. Ang pinakamatanda ho sa pag-uumpisa sa amin ay si Com Lumbat. I think he's right over there. And followed by myself and Com Paul here. Ito pong issue ho tungkol sa mga outages, bago pa po nangyari yung mga outages actually, pinareview na po ng commission kung paano ang performance ng mga planta. Kaya in a meeting actually with Senator Win the other day, nilatag po namin yung mga initial findings namin. Natukoy po namin na mga plantang paulit-ulit na nasisira between 2015 at saka 2018. Bukod po doon, yung number of hours ng outage po nila, natukoy din po namin. At natukoy din po namin kung sino ang mga pasaway na hindi nagsasubmit ng outage report sa ERC. There are 3 resolutions actually that mandate the submission of outage reports to ERC. As the outages occur, within 3 hours by SMS and within 48 hours in writing. And another report, outage report, a more detailed report, no, on the incident. There's also an annual report. So lahat po yan tinignan namin ang mga may pagkukulang. So kung pag-uusapan pa lang po, sino yung mga hindi tumupad doon sa katungkulan na dapat ayusin itong mga issue ng outages, natukoy na po ng ERC. At this stage, I am constrained from sharing the details of the information. But in time po, kasi mag-i-issue ho ng mga SHOCOS ang ERC din, itatackle po ito sa isang commission meeting. At doon po, ilalabas din po yung mga SHOCOS orders na yan. PSA review po, nabanggit po ni Secretary Cusi ito. Ito rin po ay nagawa na rin ng komisyon. Dito po sa mga nag-outage na planta mula March 5 hanggang April 15, tinignan po namin ang kanilang mga kontrata at nandito na po rin yung sa report na ito kung ano po ang mga probisyon tungkol sa planned, sa forced outage, at saka yung tinatawag na major maintenance outage. Alam po namin kung sino may mga probisyon tungkol dito sa mga replacement power at kung ano po ang mga sinasabi. In general terms po, anybody who goes beyond the allowable outage, siya po dapat ang managot. Now, meron po kami nakitang ilang mga planta na wala po sa kanilang PSA ang provision ng replacement power. Dito na po pumapasok yung usapin ng competitive selection process. At ang ERC po ay mayroon na pong near final draft set of rules. Ito po yung napubcon na, na-publish na po ito. Nasa huling stage na, penultimate stage, if I might say, ito pong pag-i-issue nitong amended competitive selection process rules. Ito po ay napakadetalyado, a copy of which can be accessed by anyone through the ERC website. Now, kami rin po naman ay merong ginagawang generation company performance scorecard. Dito po pumapasok yung sinabi kong nag-review mula 2015 hanggang ngayon. Ideally po, 5 years po dapat ang maging basihan para makagawa ng performance scorecard. Nakaka-4 na taon po, na-organize na po lahat ng data niyan. We're now looking at the NERC benchmarks. It was presented during the last hearing po ng Energy Committee ng Senate. Now, kami po'y nag-aaral na baka magkaroon ng interim implementation nitong scorecard na to by July 2019. Meaning to say, if we take a look at the performance of these plants between 2015 to 2018 and matches this against the NERC standards, meron po kami matutukoy ng mga plantang talagang hindi po nag-conform dito sa standards na ito. So, abangan po by July, hopefully, 2019. On the issue of certificate of compliance, naging mas stricto po ang ERC sa pag-review ng mga application for a certificate of compliance at ang renewal po. And there have been incidents, as reported by the chair in the previous hearing, wherein we withheld the issuance of a COC actually by a plant who had a technical problem na involved po sa outage. So sabi nga po ni Chair, ang target po ay 10 days to repair, naging 4 days po yung repair. I think when it comes to enforcement po, naging mas stricto po ang ERC sa ngayon. When it comes to reviewing the preemptive mitigation measures in WESM, yan po ay nasa radar screen din po ng ERC sa ngayon at pinag-aaralan po. Meron po mga price caps na nai-implement po ngayon. Kontento po ba ang ERC dun ngayon? Hindi po, kaya pinag-aaralan pa rin po yan ngayon. On the issue of market gaming, is that happening? We cannot say that for sure at this moment. We need to study that. And we're going to work closely with PEMC and with PCC, Philippine Competition Commission, para malaman po, no, na paglalaruan pa po ba ang merkado ngayon, no, given the very tight supply situation. Sabi po kanina, malaki ang supply, konti ang demand. Alam niyo po, pag bumagsak po ang isang planta na 600 megawatts, burado po yung supply. Yun po ang nangyayari during this past 3 weeks. So, nawawalan po tayo ng reserba, kaya nagkakaroon po tayo ng yellow alert at saka red alert. Kailangan pong dagdan. And that brings me now to the issue of PSA. Congressman Colmenares mentioned that Chair Agnes reported that there are 85 yet to be acted upon PSAs. That is true po. We will be happy to share the list with the JCPC po. Kasama na rin po dito yung capacities covered by these PSAs yet to be evaluated by the ERC. Plant inspection po, natanong kanina, ang DOE ba nag-inspect? Ang ERC po ay nakapag-inspect ng 9 na planta out of 16 na nag-breakdown po between March 5 hanggang April 15. So that's more than half of the plants that went on outage. Lahat po naman yun ay na-validate, no? Yung kaso po ng kanilang breakdown, ito po'y ibabangga namin the moment we receive the detailed technical reports from them. There is an ongoing review by the ERC on cross-ownership, which was also raised here. That is undergoing review right now by the ERC. Net metering rules, meron na po kaming draft net metering rules at ito po ay na-publish na if I am not mistaken. So we are welcoming comments from all sectors para po mapadami po sana yung nakikinabang dito po sa renewable energy at magkaroon po tayo ng diverse source of energy. I believe I've covered at least the major points po. At simultaneously po, na-raise po, nagpapasalamat po kami ng husto kay Senator Win at Congressman Velasco tsaka Uy Barreta dahil iintindihan po yung limitasyon ng ERC sa ngayon. Batang-bata po ang mga miyembro ng ERC sa ngayon. sabay sa pag-aaral, iilan lang po yung tao namin. 14 people are assigned to evaluating the PSAs. And each PSA will undergo a review between 90 to 180 days po. Kasi may mga hearing pa po yan na kinokonduct. Ang CAPEX po, 10 po ang tao namin na nag-i-evaluate noon. So, kung kami po sana'y mapagbigyan at madinig na kung paano po kami matutulungan, and we're very pleased po with the very positive position of the members of the JCPC, we would of course appreciate any help that we can receive. Salamat po.
Thank you, Comcates. Comcates, I have a basic question. No? Bago nag-Holy Week, we've experienced some severe brownouts. And the cause of that brownout is really the forced outages and unplanned outages of 6 plants, no, amounting to a capacity of 1,500 megawatts more or less. Ngayon ang tanong, meron bang penalty itong mga GenCos na nagkaroon ng forced outages at unplanned outages? Dahil kayo po yung regulator, no, kayo po pwede magpataw ng multa. Meron bang pwedeng ipataw na multa dito sa mga GenCos?
Ang unang-una pong ginagawa ng ERC ngayon ay pag-aralan yung PSA nila kasi may kasunduan po itong mga GenCos na ito at ang mga DUs kung hanggang saan po yung outage allowance. And given the mandate of the EPIRA, which promotes free and open market in the power sector, we need to be respectful of the contracts entered into by the parties. So what we're looking at is beyond the outage allowance. Ano naman ang sinasabi ng kontrata? Ang mananagot ba niyan ay ang consumer o hindi? Doon po siguro papasok yung katwiran na bakit mananagot nga ang consumer kung beyond na ito sa pinagkasunduan ninyo eh, no? Ang ERC po tungkol sa issue ng penalties, ngayon po ang tinitignan namin, compliant ba ho sila in all respects, no? From reportorial requirements to submitting the yearly maintenance, which they are mandated to do actually under one of our resolutions. At kahit doon po, simulan na namin yung mga hindi nagko-comply, ipe-penalize na po, of course, after due process. So, if the question is, will there be penalties? There will be, Chair, penalties after due course.
And I share the same opinion that meron ho kayong kapangyarihan para magpataw ng multa. In fact, I was looking at the grid code in GO 6.3.32. Paki-flash lang nga ho. It's clearly that merong responsibilities ang generation companies. And in this provision, and let me just read, the generation company is responsible for maintaining its generation units to fully deliver the capabilities declared in its connection agreement or amended connection agreement. So, importante nang nagde-deliver siya at nagme-maintain. In essence, that is the spirit of this provision. And obviously, may force outage, no? And ang question ngayon, nakaka-deliver ba siya based on his contract? But the force outage, I think for me, is a manifestation of poor maintenance, no? And siguro tatanong nyo, paano nyo nasabi yan na poor maintenance? There's a slide by Transco, this is courtesy of Attorney Melvin and Professor Wally, that says it all, no? And I'd like to pull out that slide. On the average, no? Kanina na-mention yung Comcates in North American Electric Reliability Corporation. And on the average, this is again, no, courtesy of Professor Wally, mas mataas yung force outage natin compared to our North American counterparts, no? So, pareho naman yung edad ng planta, 40 years old, no? Pareho naman coal-fired power plant, no? Bakit sila mas mababa yung kanilang force outage, no, compared sa atin, no, by 30%? In other words, kung pumantay lang tayo doon sa North American counterparts natin, hindi tayo magkakaroon ng brownout eh. No? And this is where maintenance, reliability, and accountability will come in. Bakit mas magaling yung ating North American counterparts compared sa atin? No?
Thank you, Chair, for that question. Our market is different in the way that we don't have as much supply as we'd like to have. Yung ramping up and down po, I'm not an engineer, but I've seen a coal-fired power plant po. And it was explained to me na yung manipis ho kasi masyadong ating reserba, na yung ramping up at ramping down ng ating mga planta, compared to, let's say, another jurisdiction, hindi po ganun kaabusado yung kanilang mga planta. So, the intention is really to provide for more power. And that's the reason why po, yung sa mga PSA review po at we're working triple time to simultaneously address issues of outage and the PSAs. Yung pong maganda po yung punto ni Chair kanina na sino ba ho dapat mananagot, no? Malinaw naman sa ating transmission code kung sino dapat yung mananagot. Pati po naman sa EPIRA. I think the reason why we put in some provisions in the competitive selection process on this issue, replacement power, is precisely because of some observations we've made po. Kanina po sabi, yung demand, ang supply mataas. Dito po, tinabulate namin yung pag ilang planta ang bumagsak. It ranges po from between 1,000 megawatts to sometimes, sir, more than 2,000 megawatts po yung So kung ang nakikita po natin margin ay 1,200, talaga nabura po yung margin na yun. And I think that's the reason why we really need to be able to simultaneously address the issue of supply by speeding up the PSA process without compromising, of course, the integrity of that process, and also making some people accountable and companies accountable po.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Kong.
Yeah, I am really interested with the statement of Commissioner Maceda, ongoing investigation, whether or not if the technical investigation will be provided, whether or not it was intentional or really an act of nature, kumbaga pumutok yung boiler, ano ba? Dahil sabay-sabay pumutok that resulted to 1,500 loss, no? Ako po yung nababahala dahil yun na nga yung sinasabi namin, dahil nasa control nila because of the industry now, the power industry is monopolized, and the regulatory function of government is reactive. No? Nagre-react lang tayo kapag ito, pumalya, nawala ng 1,500, bumagsak. Sabi mo nga, 1,000 lang, it will tilt the balance of the supply and demand. At kapag nangyari po yun, I would like, gusto ko pong hindi mag-assume na sinadya. Ayaw ko pong mag-isip ng masama na yun ba talaga ay nangyari dahil it was an act of God. It was not an act of human intentions, profit-driven intentions. Dahil kung sakali, Commissioner, gawin nila yan on the eve of May 13 and May 14. Yung sinabi ni Congressman, our chairman, anong mangyayari sa atin? We are at their mercy. Sabihin lang nila, pumutok po yung boiler, ay sumabog po, natanggal po yung isang bolt, kaya hindi gumana at hindi nag-deliver. Ang magagawa na lang ng gobyerno, ay sige, imbestigahan namin. We will send our technical people to verify the authenticity or their claims, whether or not really it was a failure of the technology or the mechanisms within the technology. So, there is really something that we have to long-term to address. And one is really to address yung pong talagang advocacy namin na I don't know if you agree or not, the Philippines still ranks the most expensive electricity rates among our ASEAN neighbors. If you have data to counter that position, I will be very glad to discuss with you. But according to the facts that I have been reading, isa po tayo sa pinakamahal na bayarin ng kuryente sa buong ASEAN compared to our neighboring countries within the ASEAN. Paano po nangyari yun? We have all the potentials of energy producing generation. generation. Pero again, from generation, transmission to distribution, it seems that nalilimit at lumiit talaga yung kapangyarihan ng gobyerno to ensure that these utilities as part that form parts of our basic necessities, together with water, food, shelter, education. Ako, hindi na po tayo nabubuhay ngayon ng old ages na kailangan talaga natin ng kuryente. Pero again, if these utilities are under the control and monopoly of private entities, again, the people, the consumers, is really at their mercy kung kailan nila gusto. Kaya I'm really interested, Mr. Chairman, if the results points out na on the contrary, that there seems to be an anomaly during that simultaneous blackout that resulted to the loss of 1,500 megawatts, then penalties should take place, and not just penalties, we should act a more stringent and a more serious accountability for the entities, especially the providers, the distributing utilities.
Thank you. Thank you,
Chair-
Kong. And
Mr. Chairman.
just to add, one sec, Kong Terry. Just to add, Commissioner, it's really incentivizing good operations and disincentivizing bad operations. It's as simple as that. And looking at the past experiences and actions, walang ganito sa GenCos. No? We've never punished forced outages or unplanned outages, no, for that matter. So, and looking at just comparing ourselves to our counterparts, no, we can already see that we're performing poorly compared to them. So anong ginagawa natin to disincentivize that type of poor performance? That's where I'm coming from. And I heard earlier, Commissioner, na meron na kayong scorecard na implement. And I think this will really tremendously reform the industry and make them accountable to their performance. Kung anong kinomit mo, whatever capacity you committed, perform that, no? Deliver that. And in order to deliver that, definitely you have to find ways to reduce forced and unplanned outages. There are numerous technologies out there. Technologies are improving. And we have to make sure that these GenCos are also investing, you know, in those technologies. Pero kung hindi ka walang disincentive, why will I invest? No? Total, pag nag-brownout naman ako, bahala na yung DOE. No? And pass on pa. No? So that's where I'm coming from. That's why that interim scorecard should be implemented right away. One of the reforms. And earlier I heard from a secretary, and I want to probe deeper into this, is the causers pay principle, no? Or causers pay approach. I think this will also tremendously reform the industry. Ang gusto ko lang malaman, Secretary, nasaan na tayo in that? I know you had several hearings on that, no? Several public consultation. Nasaan na ho tayo dyan? Dahil yan, importante rin ho yan. Kung sino ang may kasalanan, as simple as that, sino may kasalanan, siya ang ma-penalize, no? O mamultahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are already at the last leg of our public consultation, and by then we will be able already to come up with our policy. Now, on your statement, Mr. Chairman, on making the GenCo accountable and the DU, I think it should really begin in the enforcement of the PSA. Because the PSA is supposedly the contract that would give you the supply. If let's say there is 100 megawatt, then there is an allowable outages. And if your need is 100, when there is an allowable outages, that allowable outages there must be a source of replacement power. And if you go beyond allowable outages, then the GenCo must really replace the power at no extra cost. That's supposed to be the deal. So what we are doing is that this PSA, because what I noticed, the PSA there are different variations. Iba't iba po yung mga conditions ng PSA. So I think it's high time that the PSA, kailangan po yung diretso yung PSA. Where will you get the question of where will you get your outage allowance, your source it, no? Hindi lang po kailangan na non-firm reserve. Parang compliance para bang katulad nung una, just to comply with the documentary requirement, meron kang i-reserve, yes, nakakontrata ako. Nasaan? Nakakontrata ako sa, let's say, San Miguel. And then, hindi naman pala firm. Yung sinasabi ko from the very beginning, may spare tire ka nga, wala namang hangin. Paano yun kung kailangan mo? So there must be continuity and there must be firmness and reserve.
Yeah, just to finish off lang, in the multitude of solutions na nabanggit ho kanina, for me, what the three most important, no, and I think this should be implemented soon, is number one, the scorecard system, no, because that will enforce and put accountability on performance. Number two is the replacement power as standard in all PSAs. And then number three, the costers pay principle also. All of these, alam ko marami ho nabanggit, but itong tatlo yung pinaka, I think, the most important reforms that we should institute in the industry. And ang tanong ko ho, can we implement this in 30 days? We need a timetable or else everything is a moving target.
Thank you, Chair. We have a draft CSP rules. It's in the final stage. It's almost ready. There's a template PSA attached to the competitive selection process. There's a provision on replacement power there. Given the hearings and the inputs, we will revisit that, and we'll see if we will do another round of consultation. But definitely, Chair, you asked 30 days. Meron
Ay
na
ba
po.
30 days? Para at least meron ho tayong
Nakatawagan ako ni
matatapos.
Chair, pagalitan ako. Ano yung kinocommit mo dyan? Tapos na po eh. But I think we need to consider the inputs no, during these past 2 weeks. There's a template contract already. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But
If it's yung CSP, if it's ready for promulgation, then I think we can do it already. No?
ready na po.
Yung scorecard naman, I think that's already ready
July.
also.
We're
no?
looking at July po.
And the costers pay, I saw in the briefing, ang dami na hong public consultation. So I think everything can be implemented within the 30-day time period. So this will put accountability in the generation side of the power sector. We need that or else paulit-ulit lang ho yung ating problema.
Yes, sir. We probably will need 1 or 2 end bank commission meetings po for the CSP. We are devoting 1 special commission meeting for the CSP po. Kasi madugo po yung discussion doon. We can only anticipate. It's possible po 30 days.
So I think just to end, I would like to urge both the department and also the regulator. Sana po best efforts 30 days. Let's finish this. We need to send at least give our constituents and consumers some form of action that we're doing our best to reform the industry. We need to reform. It cannot be business as usual. And these 3 solutions is really implementing reforms in the generation side of the sector. And best efforts po, I would like, of course, it's easier, I really want 30 days, but alam ko marami kayo. But I want to encourage and urge the department and regulator na in 30 days po ilabas na ho natin. Kasi nakita ko final stage na kayo
Yung CSP po, 30 days.
Hindi naman, yan, 30 days. Diba? So, yan. And the commissions are, okay.
3 out of 5.
So thank you. I think Kong Terry also want to say
Yeah,
something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Balikan ko lang yung binabanggit po tungkol dun sa costers pay. Siyempre, prospectively, for new PSAs, okay po yun. Ano? Ang gusto lang naming malaman, will it include already previously approved power supply agreements? Will we be able to force previous power supply agreements to undertake the same costers pay principle? Kasi yun naman pong natitisod ng mga planta, hindi naman po yung mga bago kundi yung mga luma. So, gusto nating malaman, may pangil po ba ang Department of Energy or at the very least yung Energy Regulatory Commission bilang tagapag-approve ng PSAs to undertake to force previously approved generators to amend their PSAs at i-impose po yung cost space principle, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, if I may, on the cost pay mechanism, it's different from the PSA replacement power provision. So what Attorney Redon was relating to was on the PSA, and that's under the Energy Regulatory Commission. But in terms of the cost pays mechanism, it will be applicable to everybody because it does not look into the PSA. It looks into properly accounting and charging the utilization of reserves. So if there are, say for example, if there's a power plant outage, that's the cost for utilization of reserves. Now, that will identify who caused the utilization of reserves, and in that case, it's the power plant. Then the utilization of ancillary services or the reserves will be charged to the plant or any other industry participant if they cause the utilization of reserves. So yun po yung focus ng cost pays mechanism. But the cost pays mechanism will not look into the replacement power because that's covered by the PSA.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I'd just like to commend the ERC. I was asking Chairman a while ago kung may standard ba talaga yung PSA. So nakagulat pala, wala palang standard tayo na PSA contract. So I'm commending ERC for already trying to come up with a standard PSA agreement. So it also goes to show na siguro come 18th Congress, Mr. Chair, kasi medyo nagkaroon lang kami ng time constraints. It goes to show talaga, we really have to strengthen ERC. Kitang-kita naman natin kulang na kulang sila sa manpower. And yun talaga yung we were really focusing in the Energy Committee to strengthen ERC. Talagang kailangan natin regulatory body. So definitely in 18th Congress, talagang siguro nga, ang suggestion ko, add more commissioners para mas mabilis ang pag-solve nyo ng mga contracts. Also, Mr. Chair, going back to Attorney Melvin, sabi kasi Attorney Melvin, a while ago I was talking about the NGCP and the Negros. Kasi sabi ni Attorney Melvin, may system impact study. Kaya lang, Attorney Melvin, if I remember it correctly, the SIS na inisyo ng NGCP for the Negros plant, winarningan sila. Now, we cannot give you the right transmission or the required transmission to transmit your 450 megawatts. And true enough, during that time, I'm not faulting DOE. I'm faulting the DOE of the past administration for allowing a 450 megawatt plant to be placed in Negros when during that time, the power crisis was in Luzon. So hinabol lang nito 450 megawatt yung FIT supply para mapasok sila doon sa FIT. But at the end of the day, sinasabi ko nga, siguro before we can't fault NGCP, but now we can fault NGCP. Because during that time, sinabi mismo ng NGCP, hindi namin kaya yan because nagde-degrade na ang transmission lines during that time sa Negros. So if you're gonna put up a 450 megawatt, bahala ka. Hindi namin malalagay sa grid yan. NGCP, not at fault. But now, pag nag-hear tayo regarding sa transmission, NGCP should report to the Energy Committee, bakit hindi nyo patapos yung transmission lines? Or kung may ginagawa kayo, bakit ngayon lang, sayang naman yung 450 megawatts na nakatenga doon sa Negros? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, just to put everything in perspective, kasi we were discussing the penalties and sanctions. And also, but alam natin that the primary problem natin is the lack of capacity. And I echo the sentiment of the good secretary that we need more investors to come in. And just to allay the fears of other future investors here, kaya gusto namin magkaroon ng clear-cut policies, not only clear-cut but strong policies, consistent policy, and predictable policies. Kasi that will that will allay the fears of investors na hindi maganda yung environment natin. That's the reason why siguro the chairman is very insistent na ilabas na natin itong mga palisiya na to para maging uniform at maging transparent for everyone. Kasi we're not here to penalize just because nangyari. Alam naman natin that these outages are part and parcel ng kahit nga yung kotse natin talagang nasisira, kahit regularly mini-maintain mo yan. But again, we should penalize yung mga delays. Yung if you committed yourself to be back sa ganito tapos hindi mo nagawa, then yan yung pwedeng natin ano. Those are the policies that we want implemented, and this will also be a signal to our future investors that our environment is ripe for them. That's our role as the Oversight Commission, is to remind all that we're not here to scold anyone and to put blame on anyone. We just want everyone to be on the same plate para the policies that we are putting forward as far as our economic growth is concerned, as far as our desire to graduate from a developing country to a mid-developed country before the term of our dear President, will be realized.
Right, thank you, Kong Kaloy. And we're also joined by a few of our stakeholders who we mentioned earlier. Want to also hear from NGCP, no, regarding itong transmission issue. Any comments po?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Senator Win, and Chair Velasco. On the issue of the stranded capacity in Negros, particularly coming from solar power plants, as already mentioned earlier, yes, there is an SIS, or what we call as a system impact study, but we would also like to stress that everything is disclosed in the system impact study, including the current limitation of the transmission facilities, especially if the entry of these power plants, whether it's a conventional or renewable, would require grid reinforcement. So everything is mentioned in the system impact study. We would also like to disabuse the minds of the stakeholders that we approve or disapprove a project in a system impact study. It is only a study. The decision whether or not to pursue a project is at the full discretion of the project proponent. And in the case of a generation project, that is at the full discretion of the generator. We would also like to announce that the solution is already underway. We are about to finish the Cebu-Negros Panay. This is the new corridor crossing the island of Cebu, and in the middle is the Negros Island, and all up to Panay in the year 2020. This will already solve whatever transmission limitations that we are currently experiencing now. This will also enable all the solar plants located in Negros to be dispatched in full. But we would just like also to mention that while there is a total of around 430 megawatt solar in Negros, it is not actually true that all these capacities are stranded. There is only in the average of around 180 megawatts per day that is stranded, not the entire 430, precisely because of the transmission limitations. Again, we would like to reiterate that everything is disclosed in the system impact study. As I mentioned earlier, what happened was while there are areas in the country that would be able to absorb renewable energies, we were surprised that all the RE proponents located their plants in Negros. But this is something that when it comes to proposing projects that we are up to task. Again, we are about to finish the Cebu Negros Panay 230 kV. This is a new corridor by 2020. So that is already the solution to the Cebu Negros Panay transmission limitation, Your Honors. We also would like to take this opportunity to thank the Congress, particularly Senator Win Gatchalian and Congressman Velasco for and the entire Congress for enacting the EVOS. This will help us in securing permits and licenses that are currently the issue insofar as the implementing projects are concerned. We are looking forward to the crafting of the implementing rules, so that this would also help us in our pursuit to finish the projects on time, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair. Yeah. Among the 7 points raised earlier by the good secretary is the transmission problem regarding the interconnection of Mindanao with the main grid. Can you more or less give us an update on that?
The project's already in full swing, Mr. Chair. We are still up to our task that we have committed to finish the project by the end of 2020. There's already the groundbreaking of the 2 sides of the cable terminal station, one in the southern part of Cebu, and the other one in, if I'm not mistaken, in Dipolog. So this is already in full swing. We are still on track in our commitment to finish the project by 2020, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And again, on a separate note, we'll have a session on the transmission development here in our country as guided by the Transmission Development Plan. We'll invite Good Secretary again and, of course, Transco and other stakeholders to give us a briefing on that. The delivery of power is also as important as the generation of power. No? So we have to make sure that the privilege given to NGCP is being well executed. The franchise emanates from the people, and we trust that the concessionaire will use that privilege to execute projects that will deliver power on time. No? And kanina marami ho kami narinig about delays, and we'll tackle that on a separate note. No? And before I continue, I think this is one of the most important questions that we want to also hear from, we want to ask the Secretary. Sa election po, Secretary, no? Alam natin on May 13 walang pasok, no? Bababa demand, may kuryente tayo. But this, alam natin ho na yung canvassing after yan ng election, no? Anong assurance ho ang makukuha namin sa DOE na during the canvassing period? I understand it's from the election and 2 weeks thereafter. Meron ho tayong kuryente at sapat po yung kuryente ho natin.
Katulad po, thank you po, Mr. Chairman. Katulad po na napag-usapan kanina, nasabi nga po natin, there is a sufficient supply. No? Kaya lang po tayo nagka-problema, and yun pong nagsabay-sabay yung 1,500 outages. So, pagka mangyayari po talaga yun, we will have a problem at any time of the year. Kung ganun po mangyayari, problema po yun. Now, I have said, ang sinabi ko po also kanina, we have added power capacity that were not there prior to prior to April 10, and that is the TMO, the Millennium, and the TVI. And total of this is something like 470 megawatt. So napakalaking bagay po 'yon, no? Now dito po sa report na nakita ko, sabi nga po natin by May 4, that is on Saturday, papasok na po, babalik na po yung mga planta na wala sa chain, ano, sa supply chain dahil nga po nagkaroon ng outages. So kung bumalik po 'yon, balik po tayo do sa normal level po natin. And of course, we are assuring para hindi nga po magkaroon ng problema diyan sa election. We said na walang muna yung maintenance, wala tayo during that period, and we want all hands on deck of the industry player to make sure that we have sufficient power.
Mr. Secretary, it was mentioned also, and we know for a fact, itong interruptible load program ninyo. Can we put it on full swing just so that makareserve ba tayo ng additional capacity?
Dire-diretso po yung ating pag-build up ng capacity. Ano po? Meron nga po tayo mga planta na ginagawa na may problema rin po sa transmission, di po
No,
ba?
Mr. Secretary, yung point ko is yung interruptible load program. Yeah, can we put that on full swing during this time
Opo.
para makabawas tayo? And kung fully implemented yung interruptible load programs,
We
ilang bang
use that.
capacity ang pwede natin ma-made available?
250 megawatts according to my ASEC. But ginamit po natin yung interruptible load program. And sabi nga po natin, last defense natin yon. As much as possible, sabi ko po, ako nagsasabi, ayoko pong, we don't like to resort to that because that is, according to the rules, mas
Yeah.
mataas po yung
Presyo.
expense of operating
Yeah.
that, and that will also spike the price of kwan. Pero ginamit po natin yon, ginagamit po natin, and that is in place. Sabi ko nga ba dyan, embedded na po itong aking ASEC doon sa Meralco to make sure that kung kinakailangan, gawin agad yon.
Secretary, have you coordinated with COMELEC regarding the canvassing period of the department? And I just want to walk through, no? For example, May 14, may pasok na ho tayo, no? And canvassing is ongoing, no? Assuming lang, no, bumagsak ko like 1,500 megawatts, no? We'll have load droppings everywhere, no? Paano ho gagawin, ano po yung contingency measure po ng COMELEC as well as the prescribed contingency measure ng DOE po?
Well, on the question, do we coordinate with COMELEC? Yes, we do coordinate with COMELEC. Katulad po rin yun, nakaraang barangay election, nandun po yun. Nabigyan nga po kami ng DOE ng, ano ba tawag doon? Commendation na po dahil of the coordination we made. And this election, we're making that coordination also. No? What will be the measures? Kung sabi nga natin sa ganyan, sa una, preventive measures, sinabi natin na yung talagang hindi kailangan maintenance, wala muna tayong maintenance during that period. Po. So, para gano'n ang assured supply. Na sinabi ko rin po kanina na bumabalik na po yung mga nagkaroon ng ng outages po, no? So we will have that reserve, sufficient reserve. Kung isang planta lang po mawawala, okay lang po. Pero pagka nagkaroon po tayo na, again, sinabi ko na 1,500, may problema po tayo dyan, no? So we're going to operate na yung sa ILP, no po, para talagang kwan. So yung yung ating po measures, yung normal measures natin po, extraordinary measures natin, i-implement po natin yan during that period.
Assuming lang, no, I guess the worst case scenario is 1,500 mawala ho sa grid. Yung ILP pa plus itong mga bagong planta, is it sufficient to cover?
Mr. Chair, they will not be enough. Again, as what we experienced in April 10 and 11, if we will lose the same amount of capacity, it will not be enough since by the time during the election period or after the election day, the election day wala tayong problema, but after the election day, the demand level is higher than what we had on April. So with that and the same amount of outage, we can really expect that there will be a problem. Now, on the issue of the outages, the worst case that will happen is just it's an hour outage per area. So that's how the rotational outages are being implemented. And I cannot speak for COMELEC, but I think the machines are able to run on emergency supply for 1 hour. So enough naman yung 1 hour. More than 1 hour. So the worst scenario, if we experience again what happened last April 10, 11, and 12, we expect that there will still be outages. much more now because the demand is higher.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chair.
can we really not put a reserve like 1,500? Is it not possible? Walang pagkukunan ng reservang 1,500.
Mr. Chair, again, we have that reserves. In fact, we have a total available capacity or dependable capacity of more than 14,000 megawatts. And the demand for the year, the peak demand is only around 11,400 megawatts. So if all available capacities are there, or if all capacities are available, then we don't expect any problems. Now, as to assuring if there's another 1,500 megawatts, there's a supply from the 14,000 supposedly dependable capacity. The problem now is if mawala yan. So yun yung issue natin. May pagkukunan ba tayo? Wala na po because we already accounted all available capacities, which is around 14,000 megawatts nga yung dependable level. So hopefully walang outages that will happen so that we still have ample supply of or ample levels of reserves.
Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, nabanggit kanina, magka-problema tayo. If we have the same outages after election day, magka-problema tayo doon sa canvassing stage. That's what I gather, no? Of course, that's the worst thing that can happen, but that's precisely the question of the chair. What should we do? Ngayon, nagtanong ako kanina po, kasi I know that the DOE is coordinating with the COMELEC, no? Yung extended holidays ng 2 araw, hindi ba pwedeng gawin yun? At least mas-solve na yung canvassing ng local, sila Congressman Velasco, tapos na yung canvassing nila, the demand would be less on May 15. And secondly, halimbawa, hindi naman nangyari ang mga outages na yan on May 14, parang nasayang lang yung holiday. Pero nasayang nga ba? It will give our voters time to return from the provinces naman kasi. So, para safe lang ba? Kasi the way I got it now, pag may ganong similar outages on May, 13 or 14 in fact, although sa 13 kasi dahil holiday siya, hindi problema, sa 14, pwedeng magka-problema pag the same outages. Alam niyo ho, ang risk involved, ang gulo po ng election, alam mo, lokal, ang gulo-gulo po niya pag nag-brown out dun sa canvassing. Anyway, COMELEC promised na tapusin na yung lokal by in 24 hours more or less. So that's just one day sacrifice. What about that, Mr. Chair, no, Secretary Cusi, na mag-represent kayo sa COMELEC ng isang extended na holiday on May 14 para lang sure ang ating election. Lahat ng government employees tuwan-tuwa.
Well, that is something that I would leave to the people involved in the, in that measure. But as far as the energy is concerned, if the plants are there, we'll be okay. And then we will play it. We will see how it goes. May 4, they're supposed to be back. We're going to watch it day by day. And we are ready to make what necessary measures within all possible measures within our reach to do that.
So,
but if you're asking for us to ask for that holiday, that I will not. I'm not going to make any position on that.
yes, but I thought even the DOE made representations for a possibility of extended holiday. But
We did not make representation
With COMELEC.
to declare holiday. No, we are just talking to them. On that. This is the situation. This is the requirement.
Yes,
But for
well-
us to declare no.
yes, in that case, if I may, Secretary Cusi, you're going to study the May 4 return of these power plants, no? So all options are open in the sense, so even the extended holiday is an option.
That could be the option depending on how things goes from today until after election, and that will be for sure that we're going to coordinate, and it is the objective of the DOE, the whole industry, to have that power in, I mean, not to have a repeat of that situation that happened to, not only during election, but
Kasi
all
the way I read it, Mr. Chair, pag mangyari yan, say sa May 14, ang statement na talaga ng ano, na wala na tayong mapagkukunan pa kasi sagad na eh. So that's a very dangerous situation, especially in light of the, you know, election ito. And I'm sure gusto ng mga ibang kasamahan ko dito na mabilang na agad yung boto nila na ma-proclaim na sila. So, yun lang po. And really, I hope na ma-consider ito ng DOE and even COMELEC, if COMELEC is watching now, and even the members of the JCPC. Salamat, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, last question ko na. I wasn't here kasi during the Senate hearing. So, Sec, di ba, nagkaroon tayong yellow at red alert. So, yung mga nagkaroon ng unplanned outages last time, okay na sila. All the power plants, bumalik na. So, right now, when we talk about the Luzon grid, okay na ang supply natin. When we talk about the Visayas grid, okay rin. Ang Mindanao, sobra-sobra. Okay. So, at least now, yung mga naka-planned na for maintenance, ano ba yun? Tuloy pa rin sila? During election day ba may naka-planned maintenance na ano?
yun po mga naka-flood maintenance, deducted na po yun sa the available supply.
Oo nga. Ang iniisip ko lang, Sec, baka it's possible.
Mga
Ang iniisip ko lang kasi,
500
Sec,
megawatts po yun.
baka it's possible.
Na-deduct na po natin yun.
For May 13. Ang iniisip ko lang, Sec, kasi, sabi nga ni dati ko pong colleague si Attorney Neri na sagad na tayo. So, very dangerous nga for the elections. Baka naman yung naka-planned na maintenance shutdown wag na muna natin kasama na rin. So they're going to be operating during election day. Okay.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I'd like to ask the department, and I think si ASEC, the Lola yata in charge, to coordinate closely with COMELEC, because the way I understand it in our automated election is on the day itself, yung voting, nationwide yan, no? But the canvassing, it's remitted to 3 servers, no? COMELEC, NAMFREL, and a third, tawag nila third server, no? Ang tanong ko, itong mga facilities na ito, meron bang generator?
Canvassing area katulad po dito sa Senado, meron po kayo, no? Ang PPC yung ano ba, PPCRV, meron din sila.
I think it's good to check kung meron silang generator, no? And that will save us a lot of problems kung to ensure na meron silang backup power.
Yes, Mr. Chair. In fact, the Department of Energy has a task force dedicated to look into the election. The task force is regularly coordinating with the COMELEC in identifying areas wherein if walang generators, we'll send generating sets just to make sure that the power supply will be continuous.
Furnish the committee with your action plan on election and also canvassing, no? Analyzing all of these things, no?
We just ask the task force to make that ready.
Correct.
that
Just
report.
send us the strategy from the task force. All right.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just to share with you also, on a worst case scenario, ito kasi I've been privy of other task force like this before. As far as the distribution utilities are concerned, ang utos lagi dyan is that on a worst case scenario, kung manual load dropping ka, wag mong papatayan yung mga munisipyo where the canvassing are concerned. So, we're trying to paint a gloomy picture, but I'm saying there's a plan, there's a proven procedure already, and I think we just have to trust everyone, and we will enjoin everyone to just do their respective job, and surely we will be able to have a peaceful and credible election.
Mr. Chair, We agree with the Congressman Barreta. All of the DUs, Meralco included, and all of the other electric cooperatives, they follow a protocol on load dropping. Certain feeders, some of them are called special feeders or special line, are really prioritized. Hospitals, and in the election time, they prioritize yung canvassing area and all of the vital institutions on certain events. In the election time, the DUs and the electric cooperatives are already aware of the protocol to really prioritize areas that are vital to the conduct of the election.
Yes, Commissioner.
I just want to put on record for the information of everyone that the Commission actually just very recently promulgated a resolution that will give the system operator the flexibility to activate the ILP. Dati po kasi red alert, tapos nag-iintay pa. Ngayon po, nagpasa ng resolution ng Commission na sinasabi po dito, we are actually adopting a particular section in the Philippine Grid Code which defines the conditions of a so-called emergency state. So if any one of those conditions would arise, the system operator would have that flexibility now. Hindi na po kailangan red alert lang.
They can trigger ILP even before
Yes,
the
Your
red
Honor.
alert. Okay,
Yes, Your
thank
Honor.
you. That's a good innovation. Traditionally, we go stakeholder by stakeholder around the table, but in the interest of time, dahil babalik pa raw si co-chair sa Marinduque, at kahit walang kalaban ho, no? At mga kampanya pa si Kong Kaloy, si Kong Neri. In the interest of time, we would like to solicit any comments, kung meron ho kayong reaction, meron ho kayong clarification, suggestion. Would like to, I'm opening the floor to any reaction. And to trigger that, Attorney Ann of the Association of GenCos, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, Honorable Committee. From the discussion, in the interest of time, I will be just going through very fast a few comments and reactions and things that we would like to highlight. Firstly, on behalf of the generators, we would like to emphasize that EPIRA works, and it has been working. We have been building new capacities, and we have been improving old plants that have been privatized. So this means that privatization works. A few examples. Masinloc was originally 150 megawatts. Now it's 600 megawatts. Ambuklao and Binga, which are located in Benguet, it was destroyed by the earthquake from 0 capacity to 105 megawatts. From 100, and Binga was from 100 megawatts to 140 megawatts. So this means that our geothermal plants as well, you have Tongonan, Pelinpinon, Bacman, the rehabilitation plans done by our private investors are on time and within its promise to answer the call of government to build, rehabilitate, and add capacities. What we ask the Honorable Committee is to also subject the government-controlled plants to the same rules as private entities, as the private plants. Note that government-controlled plants are also subsidized by the universal charge. So we want fairness. We want to compete fairly. We want a level playing field. With a level playing field, we can provide better supply, and obviously there will be better prices. We wish the same effort will be exerted, moving forward. We need to continuously examine how a level playing field can be implemented across all parties, and that is very important to us. Not only the private sector, but also the government as well, also government-controlled plans. Secondly, the figures by Transco earlier on forced outage rates, we would like to clarify that this includes also government plants. So there is quite an effect if you take a look at the figures. That we would like to at least ask the Honorable Committee to note that the figures there includes all kinds of plants, even the government-controlled ones. So now we go on to a more positive note, which are solutions. We welcome the efforts of the committee, and which is why we continuously participate in all discussions with regard any kind of topic, because we believe in a healthy energy industry. So this means that we want to reach appropriate and applicable solutions that will be implemented. This means that the concept of red and yellow alerts have to be examined objectively and from the perspective of all parties: the generation, transmission, distribution. Again, as I've said last week, reactionary measures or solutions will not address the main problem and will end up only being costly to consumers in the end and act as a disincentive to investors. This means what kind of solutions? We talk about filling the gaps in policy. We talk about filling the gaps in terms of spikes, seasonal spikes in our demand, which happens every summer when it's hot. So what kind of solutions are there? We implore the committee to take a look at forwards market. We have been discussing this for the longest time. We need the forwards or reserves market. We need energy storage solutions. We need to improve grid functions. But more importantly, on forwards market, having a forwards market can address replacement power, unutilized contracts of DUs due to RECOA, and additional capacities needed. We look forward to a time that we can actually sit and effectively discuss this kind of solution, because that, if you examine this thoroughly, it will address whatever we're discussing now. So kindly consider that perspective. We look forward to sitting down with everyone again so we can take a look at this. So lastly, PIPA members, we do not tolerate collusion. We thoroughly support a competitive market, and we are open to investigation by our regulators on allegations of collusion. Note that most of us have foreign investors. Therefore, we are also strictly guided from the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is why we are averse to any allegations of collusive behavior. While it is quite unfortunate that there have been forced outages affecting all of us, these are again isolated and unforeseen incidents that were aggravated by several factors attendant at that particular time. Yes, they are seasonal, but note that these are also isolated. We generators are committed to solve these problems the soonest possible time, because the more we stay offline and experience technical difficulties, the greater impact it has on the financial viability of a plant. So I think that needs to be emphasized as well. So in closing, we would like to say that old and new plants experience forced outages. This is why we cannot underscore more the need for ancillary services and other solutions that are available to us. We just need to open our minds and discuss it. Let us focus on regulations that can provide solutions and try to avoid punitive policies which only serve to discourage investors and developers alike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Ani. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, yes. Earlier we being asked on as far as what would be what would supply looks like during the election, and I've been saying that the plant is coming back. Since just now I found and noticed that PIPA is here, so we can ask them directly
to answer the question.
to answer that question, because the supply is not being controlled by DOE. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Attorney Ani, can you also share with us the industry's outlook from election day all the way to canvassing? I think you have direct information as well as direct interaction with the GenCos, no? Kung ano
Yes.
ba yung kanilang outlook during those time periods.
Sir, we are part of the DOE task force. All our plants regularly give the data from I think when they notified us early this year with regard this, all our representatives are present in the task force. We are committed to supplying energy. That's why, as I've said last week, we rescheduled our planned outages based on the instruction of the DOE. So every day, as mandated by law, we always submit the data to the DOE. And all of each plant has its own designated representative as part of the task force. So that's no problem. I foresee no problem with that.
Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mr. Chair. So just a very definitive answer po, Attorney Ann. So there will be no planned outages muna during election day, am I right po?
Planned are already, well, from the main word of planned, they were already taken into consideration by the DOE.
So there will be a planned outage, except that they were already taken into consideration.
For the hydro plants, wala po talagang tubig, so talagang nakaplan siya.
Yes,
Ayun.
yes,
But pero nakaschedule na po yung, I mean, nasa DOE po. Wala po akong data of each specific, kaya kasi I'm not supposed to have that kind of information.
Okay.
Yun po ay available lang to each of the generators na sinasubmit directly po sa DOE.
Yes. Ang sunod ko sanang tanong sa iyo po, Attorney Ann.
Yes, sir.
So wala rin kayong nakaschedule na forced outage?
Ay, sana naman po, wala. Sana naman po. Kasi hindi po sinischedule yun.
Para lang sure.
Sir, leading naman po yun. Hindi po yun sinischedule.
Okay. So, kasi medyo worried lang po ang mga tumatakbo sa election din, sa canvassing. And of course, commend din si Chair Sherwin na kahit hindi siya tumatakbo ngayon, at least he's trying to ensure na may kuryente. So, but siguro just a short of an assurance naman na
Yes po.
everything is up and going and there will be no outages doon sa May 14 actually.
Yes po, I think election is very important to us because we will be electing our public leaders and those who will be changing the course of our law and regulation for the next few years. So, from personally po, and I guess I can speak for the generators, yes, we are committed to making sure that there is power on that day and the day on the canvassing and for the future days po.
Salamat. So may basis na ang causer's pay mo, may admission na kasi. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Any comments from the body? Any suggestions or reactions? Kung meron ho kayong any... Professor,
Good afternoon po. Transco has prepared two analysis actually. We have presented last time our analysis on the adequacy dimension of reliability. But we have also analyzed the security aspect of the grid, which is, I think, equally important. Kasi ho, yung pinag-uusapan ho natin, nagsasubtract lang ho tayo ng itong capacity minus demand. Pero yung hong reserve na available, hindi ho natin napag-usapan kung paano ho ba ito na ma-manage para ho maiwasan ang tinatawag na automatic load dropping na mas malaki ho ang consequence. But if the Commission, if the Chair would allow us to briefly discuss it, we are ready to present the second dimension of our analysis.
is that related to the grid and transmission?
Yes, sir. Ang point ko, sir, is kasi baka nakakalimutan po natin na yung problema, hindi lamang po yung adequacy. Tingin ko, kulang ang ating pag-uusap patungkol doon sa security ng grid.
Yes. Professor, we will have a separate session on the transmission and the grid. Medyo ano ho yan, extensive po in discussion. So, on a separate note, and with the permission of our co-chair, we can convene again the JCPC before 17th Congress ends, no? And we can talk about that because that's equally important rin ho. Okay. Any comments po before we... Jay?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We prepared a few slides, but if I can just show two slides for lack of time. Mr. Chair, we'll wait for the two slides. Slide number... Slide number 26, the second to the last slide. Mr. Chair, for the benefit of the counterparts in the House, DREAM is the umbrella organization of all the RE associations in the Philippines. We have decided to band together in the hope that we carry common interests and advance the development of renewable energy in the Philippines. We fully agree with the statement of Senator Colmenares and in his support for RE and of course Congressman Velasco. In fact, Your Honor, consistent with the request of the committee to ask for solutions, the RE developers are ready to build new capacities, and we have been saying that for so many years already. But we hope that the government will help us build our capacities, because if you will see this long list, I can go A to Z. We have so many issues that are faced by the RE developers, preventing them from building new capacities. And I'm happy to know that if we had built perhaps more solar farms, especially during summer months, when hydro is dry, if we have more panels, certainly it can address the peaking requirements during the summer months. But if I may go very quickly, Mr. Chair, we're happy to know that ERC Commissioner Maceda confirmed that the CSP rules will be out in 30 days. We have been waiting for that for almost a year and a half. And, but of course, and I note in particular that she said they have 1 or 2 meetings to discuss about 2 to 3 final points. And if I may, in fact, the industry raised 2 to 3 points, which we believe should be addressed by the Commission to ensure that we have a very competitive and optimal price for RE. Because in the current CSP draft rules, they limited the term of PSA to only 10 years. And as we know, when we go for financing, a shorter period of time to borrow from banks would mandate a higher interest rate, which would translate into a higher electricity price. So we were hoping that ERC would consider long-term PSAs, or at their option, ask for either 10 to 20 years bids, because they would see definitely the comparative pricing for both different terms. In that list as well, Mr. Chair, there are so many ERC pending matters that we hope can be addressed very soon. We have the FIT adjustment under the FIT guidelines. We have the framework for the green energy option. We also were hoping that the new PSAs to be approved by ERC would be more fair and transparent and uniform, because in the past we have seen different PSAs with different methodologies in calculating them. Again, we want only transparency, and benchmarking would be a good methodology. At the same time, Mr. Chair, if I may, also in that list is a list of DOE pending matters. We're hoping to work more with DOE, especially on pending renewable energy service contract applications, assignments of service contracts, declaration of commerciality approvals, among other things. And we have them. The distributed energy rules as well would help the industry build more capacities. For purposes of the JCPC, Mr. Chair, we raise in particular the issue of the 15% requirement under the EPIRA. As we know, EPIRA mandates that all generation companies offer their equity 15% to the public. But the RE law was passed 7 years after EPIRA, and as we all know, renewable energy plants are smaller in capacities and therefore smaller owners. To require them to sell 15% to the public would not be optimal. That's why we're hoping some clarity from JCPC. We're also hoping that consistent with our desire to make sure that the electricity price will be more affordable to the consumers, we note in particular, and we're happy to know that NGCP said they will finish the CNP upgrade by 2020 because we received a different timing. In fact, we were told there was a 1-year delay. But along that line, Mr. Chair, at the last hearing we raised, and we're appealing to the DOE and NGCP that they allow the biomass plants, the new capacities that had been built, to be dispatched even as the CNP upgrade is pending. Because we have seen lately, especially with the increase in coal prices, that the biomass plants will actually offer cheaper electricity than the conventional. No? And we're hoping that they will be dispatched even as the CNP upgrade is currently being finished by NGCP. Of course, Mr. Chair, I repeatedly raised the problem of land conversions with the DAR and the DA. NCIP, again, getting the FPIC and the certificates of overlap, non-overlap, again, is so difficult to obtain. And of course, we are faced with a Supreme Court petition filed by AGHAM, no, questioning the constitutionality of the RE law. So we're hoping, of course, DREAM will intervene finally. We're hoping that Congress can help us because you wrote the law, no, which is now being challenged before the Supreme Court. No. All these, Your Honors, if they're only addressed by government, we can be sure, and you can be assured by the RE industry, that we will build more capacities. And we're hoping that we can contribute to helping the country solve its energy security issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Jay. Secretary, I remember a few years back, no? I think it's 2015 yata yun, or 14, 15. We had also an energy crisis at that time. And one of the solutions that was put forth was to build a lot of solar power plants. Because to put up a solar power plant, you need 1 year, no, Jay? 1 year? 1 year?
6 months, actually.
Six
Mr.
months
Chair.
to a year, no? To inject power. So, mas mabilis ho siya kasi magpatayo ho tayo ng mga fossil fuel. And I would like to hear from the department as to this type of the support and also this type of solution using RE to fill in the gap, no, is something that the department is pushing, or something that within the list of strategies of the department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, actually, as earlier stated, there are a lot of solars that have been built but not being dispatched. That NGCP said something like out of 400, only 300 are 100, something like that, in the number. So there are still, it's true that madaling i-construct ang solar. But there are other concerns that we have to also study. The disruptive effect of that on the grid. No? Because solar, we're using that for peaking. But of course, yun ang sinasabi rin po ni Commissioner Maceda, na when you ramp up and ramp down the power plants, the mga coal, it causes the maintenance problem. No? Parang inaabuso natin. Kasi siyempre, pagka nilagay po natin ang solar, kailangan ibaba mo yung the traditional. Ano po? And then the NGCP, mayroong mga problema po sa disruptive effect sa grid. Hindi lang po itong problemang ito dito sa ating bansa. In all other countries, there is problem on that country. They're just more developed. But tama po yun, madaling gawin, madaling ipasok. But, siyempre, may limitation po. No? A limitation is, it is for peaking. So, ginagawa po natin dito sa solar, marami po tayong window of opportunities for solar, especially in our SPAG areas and island provinces, where the power is still dependent, as a source of power is still the generator, the diesel power plant. No? So, in ginagawa po natin dito, nag-hybrid po tayo. So, capital cost is a little higher because aside from just the genset, you put the solar, but it becomes more reliable and cheaper. So, yun po ang window ng as far as the solar and the biomass. But on that concern, just want to react on the concern of the industry challenges, the renewable. No? Those issues can be best discussed if I'm inviting you to the office, and that can be best discussed with the people concerned so that we can address that immediately.
Secretary, that's actually my suggestion, is to look at the issues surrounding the RE industry. Because ako, tingin ko ho, makakatulong rin tong industriya, no, in terms of fast additional supply. Of course, it's complicated because we have grid stability to think of. But karamihan no nitong mga issue nila are also connected to red tape, no? So we need to address this. And the more players we have, the better for the consumers, the better for the industry, no?
If I may add, dyan po sa renewable, katulad po yung net metering, no, medyo hindi nagkaroon po ng problema sa implementation because again, on the issues of yung mga opposition, no, po, to the project. That is an area that we can really install and help immediately our supply. Because kung bawat bahay magkakaroon ng solar, that is lesser demand from the grid. At the same time, they can sell the excess to the grid. So yun po mga na dapat nating magawa agad ngayon na ma-implement net metering, go to the provinces, no po. Kasi ulitin ko po, yung problema po sa grid may problema po sa grid kung nandyan po lahat ang renewable. Now, for the information also of the body, as far as our renewable is concerned, kung talagay lang po natin yung sa region, ang target at 23%, we are already at 30%. So mataas po yung ating renewable. With no offense to the renewable, we have been there. I mean, the Philippines have been there in renewable. And that's the reason why Philippines is number 1 in the Trilemma Index. We are number 1 in environmental sustainability. But at what price? This is what I said in the forum that I have attended, international forum, in saying that at what price? At what price is that we have a higher electricity price, no? And that's where I was inviting the proponent of the clean air. Why don't you locate in the Philippines, invest in the Philippines if you want renewable? We have high renewable, and how come you don't locate in the Philippines? It's because, again, bataas daw yung kuryente natin, yung reason. So we are very, very high in the Trilemma Index, number one in the world. But we, as far as energy equity and energy security, we are at something like at the last quarter of the 120 countries, somewhere there. Mr. Yang.
Thank you, Secretary.
Just last some points doon sa forced outage lang. May question pala ako kanina sa slide, Mr. Chair, na hindi ko pa natanong. ARC and DOE, you are investigating the plants with forced outages. No? So, ang tanong ko lang po, done to death na po yung bira namin sa GENCO kasi during those times. No? Ang tanong ko lang sa DOE and sa ARC, may planta po ba kayong inimbestigahan na hindi nyo pa napuntahan? Of all the plants na may outages, ilan na po napuntahan ng DOE and ERC also? At ilan pa po yung hindi nyo napuntahan nung nag-i-investigate po kayo? Simple po yung aking thinking na pag nag-imbestiga, pupuntahan din. Kasi parang ang hirap mag-imbestiga pag hindi napuntahan. So maybe get first from the ARC muna and then the DOE.
Salamat po. I think you stepped out, sir, when I discussed that.
Sorry for that.
Nung March 5 to April 15 po, may nag-breakdown na 16 power plants. Of the 16 power plants, 9 na po ang napuntahan ng ERC. So, ito po, yung findings ng aming mga engineers, imamatch po doon sa mga reports na sinabmit din po nila sa ERC. Patuloy po na pinupuntahan ng ERC, nadagdagan ng 5 pa, I was told, no? From 2015 to from April 25 up to April 30, parang may 5 planta yatang nadagdag na nag-down. So pupuntahan pa rin ho yun.
So out of a total of 21 plants na nag-forced outage, ang napuntahan pala ng ERC ay siyam. Tama
Yes,
po?
during the period
9
March,
out of 21.
9 out of 21 po. 22 po.
9 out of 22. So, hindi pa po nangalaha. No. Ang 5, hindi. 9 pa lang napuntahan nila. Yung 5 ay additional outage yun na hindi pa napuntahan.
Pero nasa schedule na kung pupuntahan isa-isa yan.
Hindi po ba mabagal masyado ang pagpunta natin?
Sir, kasi po yung initial na 9, kaagad-agad po yun pinatakbo namin nung March 5 up to the 25th of April. Naging 22 po siya, nadagdagan po ng marami between April 25 up to the 30th.
Yes.
Kaya po siya naging 16 lang po yan originally. So mahigit sa kalahati ho napuntahan na namin. But between the 25th to the 30th, nadagdagan po siya kaya naging
Yes,
22.
yes. So
Yan po
9 out of
nakalinya po.
22.
Oho.
Sa DOE po, Secretary Cusi.
Yung po technical evaluation, hindi po DOE ang nagkuka niya, no? Nag-investigate. Yung po sinabi ko kanina na investigation namin, ang assessment is really to find out what are the degree of reliability of the plant. No, pero kung doon sa nangyari po, nagkaroon ng outage, hindi po ang DO mag-i-investigate noon. We are looking at the market behavior kung ano nangyayari pagka nagkaroon po ng outage. No? On the price market behavior, ano ba nangyayari? On the particular plant, sino po nagkuka niyan? Pero ang investigation po, yung sa mga kanina, sa mga different allegations, ano po, nasa PCC po. Ano? And we are coordinating with them. So in fact, I just asked my assistant to schedule the meeting with PCC because may letter po sila sa akin.
Yes, thank you. So ang klaro dito, Mr. Chair, Secretary Cusi, sa mga plantang may forced outages, wala ni isa pinuntahan ang DOE to investigate. So out of the 22 plants,
Yeah, we visited, may technical guys are at the back, but we visited several plants when the instance that they declared a forced outage.
So
We
sa
sent
listahan
teams
niyo
to
po.
verify.
sa listahan nyo po, ilang planta ang total na kailangan imbestigahan at ilan po dyan yung napuntahan?
We can just give you the number ng what?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We can provide you a specific number, but on my personal knowledge, we sent a team to one plant because I ordered the investigation. Yes.
So for now, officially muna, 1 out of 22. Tama po. At least yung confirm, 1.
Yes. But actual investigation, yun, isa pa lang yung napapatan.
Salamat, Mr. Chair. That clarifies a lot. So last point na lang, Mr. Chair, nabanggit kanina Secretary Cusi, yung research sa market behavior. Yung isang point ko po kanina sa slide ko is yung sa PEMC actually naka-address, saan ba yung PEMC, Mr. Chair? Kasi ang aking pagkaalam, and I would like to be corrected if I'm wrong, hindi pa defined ng ating market ngayon what constitutes abuse of market power or yung collusion in layperson's term, no? Ang tagal na nung 2013 case namin sa Korte Suprema alleging the very same thing. And I'd like to get the input of the PCC also on that. Bakit hindi po siya ma-define? Hindi ba kailangan siyang ma-define para magkaroon tayo ng clear standards? Kailan natin masabi na may abuse of market power? And of course, first, I'd like to address the question to Secretary Cusi kasi yun pong investigation niyo po na ginagawa.
Well, in fact, yung nangyari po no sa 2014, I wrote may mga inquiries kami pinadala na po, no? And in fact, ang PCC is investigating that. So we need the result of the investigation before we can truly come up with
The parameters po. The parameters for the definition of abuse of market power. So from the PEMC, Mr. Chair, if we may.
Mr. Chair, as we pointed out during the last hearing, in the EPIRA, there is no definition of commission of anti-competitive behavior, but in the EPIRA IRR, there are particularly Rule 11, Section 8, on anti-competitive behavior and other unfair trade practices. There are instances where anti-competitive behavior can be committed. Just to mention, number one is any contract, combination, or conspiracy that unreasonably restricts competition in any market for competition. Another is any conduct that constitutes an abuse of market or an attempted monopolization, such as fixing prices of products or services, fixing output of products or services, customer product service or territorial divisions, tying, physical or economic withholding, discriminatory provision or regulated distribution or transmission services, misrepresentation or false advertising of a distribution utility, and cross-subsidization. In RA 10667, the law that creates the Philippine Competition Commission, or the Philippine Competition Act, there are also provisions there, particularly Section 14, I think, and 15, which would cover anti-competitive behavior. And these are anti-competitive agreements concerning price fixing, bid ridding, supply restriction, market sharing, and abuse of dominant position. Listed here are predatory pricing, imposing barriers, unfair trading, and conditions, excessive pricing. These are the definitions of anti-competitive, what constitutes anti-competitive behavior. But as we said last week, the PEMC has no authority to investigate and penalize the commission of anti-competitive conduct or behavior. These are provided for in the powers of ERC and the Philippine Competition Commission. Right now, in fact, as we mentioned last week, we intend to have a cooperation agreement with PCC. Our people, together with the staff of PCC, met last Friday precisely to determine the parameters on how PEMC can possibly assist ERC and PCC in precisely implementing these provisions of the IPIRA IRR and Philippine Competition Act.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sa last point ko na lang sa PCC, kasi may found na ba na nagko-commit nito, may parameters naman more or less na naset dun sa IPIRA for that matter, Mr. Chair. Thank you. That's my last question, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to confirm the information provided by PEMC, Mr. Chair. That's correct. With regards to our fact-finding with regards to this issue, we gather information. PEMC provided us the data, and we ran some analysis on this data. But to really determine if there is anti-competitive conduct or behavior, we need actually to ascertain if the outages was really deliberate, and that is the assistance that we need from our from DOE, Mr. Chair. So that's why, as in compliance also to the suggestion of Senator Gatchalian during the Senate Committee on Energy meeting last Thursday, on close coordination between PCC and ERC and DOE, we already sent a formal request with DOE and ERC for a close coordination and possible creation of a task force specific to these power outages, and also pursue the signing of a memorandum of agreement between these agencies, because most of our of our data needs, Mr. Chair, we need their assistance, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last point, may nalala lang ako, Mr. Chair, sa ERC. When we filed the petition in the Supreme Court in 2013, December, during the Malampaya shutdown with forced outages, if I remember, the Supreme Court ordered the ERC to come out with its position on whether there was collusion or not. Has the ERC already submitted a final? I saw the initial, but ERC said it's just an initial report. Has there been a final report on that? And if I may, Mr. Chair, can I also be given a copy of that as a petitioner in that case, Mr. Chair?
Salamat po. I have to apologize. Wala po kami doon, pero based po sa consultation ko sa team din kanina bago ho nag-hearing, meron pong initial report nga na lumabas. Ang kautusan po ay dapat ang ERC ay mag-convene ho ulit ng hearing, para po ma-validate po yung mga nakalagay dun sa initial report. Nagkaroon po ng supervening events. Unfortunately po, alam nyo na po yung supervening events, kaya hindi po na tutukan ito. But this is among the priorities po of the ERC, their constituted ERC at the moment. And hopefully we can give a report to the JCPC in 30 days. We will submit a report.
That's very good. Thank you, Mr.
Favorite
Chair.
number ho namin ang 30 ngayon.
And Mr. Chair, I'd like to request if I can also have a copy. But just to be sure, Mr. Chair, hindi ko po alam ang supervening event. I mean, the case was filed in 2013. It's now 2019. What was the supervening event that transpired? Bakit hindi nagawa ang report po?
Nawalan po ng commissioners yung ERC for some time.
Okay.
So, and then yung mga staff din po, nawala din po yung mga original na nag-handle nito. Lahat po yung legal team nag-disappear po. Kaya, we will submit a report po within 30 days to JCPC on the status, at least the status report po.
Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm glad na may report at last after, 6 years from the time. And Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to request also for a copy from the JCPC for that, because we're very interested, of course, in the report of the
Chair,
ERC.
I just wish to clarify, we'll be submitting a status report on this issue po with the JCPC. Pero yung final report po, hindi po, kasi that will still undergo a process. At least kompleto na po ang commission ngayon. Ito po'y aandar na. But we'll submit this report, a status report, to the JCPC po.
I don't know how to react. It's a status report po. Ang status po kasi, the status is, wala pang report. Yun na po yung status po niyan eh. So, I mean, di ba? I don't really want to see a status report po.
Ano po?
It's a long time coming po kasi paulit-ulit po eh. I mean, if I may finish.
Yes, sir.
2013, the same situation, plant outages, etc. We went to the Supreme Court, sinabihan ang ERC. So draft a position on this. Kasi you're supposedly the trier of facts, kumbaga eh. So, yun po yung hinihintay hanggang ngayon, kaya siguro, yun lang. Ngayon, if possible po, Mr. Chair, wala naman akong magawa, no? I'm not a member of the JCPC ngayon. But siguro lang masabi sa ARC, nabilisan na rin yung final report, kasi I doubt very much if that status report will make any headway from the original initial report, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, just to satisfy what my colleague and soon-to-be senator is asking for. Siguro, ma'am, ganito na lang. Ang status report, i-include lang niyo yung timelines. I think that will be more on a positive note. At least yung sinasabi na matagal na, at least ngayon meron na tayong aasahan kung kailan. Now, we don't want to force anything from ARC at this point in time. Alam naman natin yung pinanggalingan ninyo. We empathize with the entire ERC. And siguro, yun na lang, include in the status report more on the timeline na ilalabas natin yan.
Salamat, Kong
we will
Ibarreta.
comply, sir.
Thank you, Kong.
Just to reiterate, Kates, no, I do share the sentiments of Kong Neri na matagal na ho to, 2013 pa ho to, no? And there's an issue of collusion rin eh. And ayaw natin na umiikot sa isip natin na dinidelay lang ho tong issue of collusion. In fact, the issue of collusion is now here, present again, no? So without resolving the previous issue, parang umiikot sa isip ho natin basta there is a talk of collusion, dinidelay o hindi pinag-uusapan, no? And I really share the sentiment of Kong Neri. In order to also discipline the players, we have to have resolution. Kung wala ho tayong resolution, walang disiplina ho nangyayari, paulit-ulit lang ho. No, and 30 days kaya ho ng resolution.
Yung 30 days, Chair, will include the timelines. This will undergo a legal process po within the Commission. We don't want to rush things because these are very serious allegations. So we need to get all the facts po.
I think the point here, Commissioner, is let's make a decision already. No?
We
It's
will
been
do that.
6 years already, and again, issue of collusion, and this will always stick out for the next few years. So if hindi natin re-resolve ito, then we're not disciplining anyone. No?
Yes, sir. We'll start with the timelines, which we will submit not even 30 days, but sooner than that, Mr. Chairman. And we'll make this as one of our priorities.
Thank you, and thank you, Kong Neri, for bringing this up. No?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any more reactions from the body?
Yeah,
Attorney
Mr.
Jay?
Chair, if I may just one last point because Commissioner Cates came back. I fully agree with the statement of Secretary Kusi that if we had more panels, no, we would reduce demand because each household would have its own source of power. And along that line, therefore, we're hoping that ERC can finally push with the distributed energy rules, no, again, which has been pending for quite some time. And if I may, just one last slide, Mr. Chairman, I'll take advantage already. As Secretary Kusi discussed price, no, the RE industry, slide 24, no, the RE industry is very happy to note, in fact, Mr. Chairman, that since 2012, when ERC first passed the FIT rates, no, of a certain level for each technology, in fact, for solar it was 9.68 and 8.69. We're happy to note that, in fact, ERC approved 2 PSAs, one at 4.72 and the other one at 2.99. No? The range of PSA rates nowadays for solar is between 3.25 to about 4. No? So the price issue of RE being expensive is no longer there. No? In fact, even as we use the FIT rates, which were approved in 2012, you will see in the spot price, and PEMC can confirm this, that RE, as in fact confirmed by the DOE, replaced or displaced the more expensive peakers, which are the diesel generators. No? So we cannot compete yet. No? Solar cannot compete with base load. No? We're talking about peaking plants. No? And as a result of those FIT plants, no, we were able to save the consumers whose DUs were buying from the spot market approximately 25.9 billion or 9.5 centavos per kilowatt hour. This is just as of April 2018. No, and I've requested, in fact, PEMC to update this because, in fact, the numbers have gone even higher. As oil prices go up, we displace the diesel generators and therefore put in the RE, and therefore everyone would be happy with much more affordable electricity. So that's just our last point. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Jay, for sharing that. Secretary?
Just a word of caution about the rates and saving of 150 on solar, as we were mentioning about the disruptive effect and the spike on the ancillary charges when that happens, when it's being used. So what we are doing, with no offense again to the solar operator, what we need to do is a holistic study of what is the impact or the total impact to the consumer. So let's not be saying that it is 150. Yes, it is 150, but there are attached ancillary service to do that, and that should be added on to the cost. We are doing that study, Mr. Chairman, because we really want to give what is right to the consumers.
Thank you, thank you. And just to share with you, no, I read an article yesterday. For the first time in the U.S., RE production in terms of output is now more than coal. And in fact, coal production in the U.S. is steadily declining. I think by the by an average of about almost 10%, no, per annum. And in other words, papunta na ho tayo doon, no. It's up to us to dictate the pace dahil nga maraming complication, and this is where we really need to study grid stability as a main factor, no. And again, later on we'll talk about that, but my point is renewable energy is really becoming a reality, no, in developed countries and also coming here to the Philippines, no. All right, any comments pa ho? Yes, Ann.
Mr. Chair, just a note from PCC, because PCC, while it is a primary and has a primary and original jurisdiction on competition concern, the Antitrust Commission, Mr. Chair, acknowledges the technical expertise and regulatory functions of DOE and ERC in overseeing the power industry. So it is very important for us, Mr. Chair, the PCC, to have really a close coordination with them, especially the creation of a task force that would facilitate the sharing of information and avoid duplication of efforts, Mr. Chair, no, especially in conducting fact-finding. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think we agreed last time, and I want to remind both regulators, definitely ERC has the technical knowledge and the technical expertise as well as experience in terms of power, no? But in terms of anti-competitive behavior, acknowledged PCC has that knowledge, no? I've worked with PCC and they really have very good people looking at anti-competitive behaviors and anti-competitive practices all over the world, no? Not only here in the Philippines. So let's merge these two expertise, no? Kasi may power and anti-competitive ka. In terms of anti-competitive behavior analysis, ERC, nasa mandate, but admittedly mas extensive yung sa PCC kasi lahat ng industriya tinitignan nila, no? Let's merge the expertise of these two regulators, and yun yung na-agree natin that ERC will take the lead, but working very, very closely with the PCC.
Chair, we'd be happy to work with DOE and PCC regarding the issue of anti-competitive behavior.
Thank you. Attorney Annie?
Sir, one last thing. We'd like to clarify with regard also the recent outages. It's also because of the earthquake, the recent earthquake. So in examining that forward solution, if we're talking about solutions, I think everyone has to consider also how to treat that type of outage for force majeure, since these are acts of God. So it's more of examining like globally when that happens. These things we need also to take into consideration.
Okay, so any
Last point, Mr. Chairman.
yes.
Just a follow-through with your statement with regards to measures to ensure that the ERC and the PCC work hand in hand in ensuring that there will be no circumvention to avoid and to address collusion. Especially, my personal take on the proposed amendments that I will make in case the 18th Congress will tackle the review of EPIRA law. With regards to cross-ownership, it has been our advocacy that within the EPIRA, you have consolidated, you have taken care, you took care of an industry that provides monopoly. When a generator and a distribution utility owns both, sister company man yan o hindi, mabibigyan mo talaga ng posibilidad na may magkakaroon ng collusion. And it will open the gates for a possible circumvention. Precisely when you put a provision of the law that allows cross-ownership, then you provided venue for monopoly. Kaya nga, and I'll make sure, Mr. Chairman, together with our upcoming speaker, a member of this, the co-chairperson of this committee, once we filed a repeal bill or a bill that will amend the EPIRA, well, it will be a battle that will be ensured for the interests of the consumers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. I think more pertinent to the question on collusion is what is the plan of all the parties involved in the Court of Appeals case on whether or not this will be appealed to the Supreme Court? Because I think as far as everyone is concerned, the Court of Appeals had affirmed that ERC has no right to impose particular caps on the prices during the 2013 incident. So we actually want to know from maybe from the power generators, many of them are here today, is this going to be continuing discussion up to the Supreme Court, and what is the plan of the ERC, whether or not they will proceed to the Supreme Court or will they continue to just negotiate for maybe an amicable settlement on the question of the additional rates that had been imposed on the consumers, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner, you can answer briefly.
We will appeal, Chair. Working with the Office of the Solicitor General regarding that ruling.
Actually, gusto kong itanong, Mr. Chairman, kailangan pa bang pahabain natin yung proseso? Hindi po ba makikipag-usap na lang tayo with the generators and maybe with the distributors para tapusin na lang po ito? Particularly dahil siyempre sa dulo-dulang gusto naman natin yung kapakanan po ng tao yung manaig dito sa bagay po na ito, Mr. Chairman.
That's the prerogative of the Commission, and we'll wait for the Commission's...
We are exhausting all legal remedies, Chair, and we cannot do a shortcut, but we continue to perform our duties under the EPIRA, as reported earlier.
Okay, so any more comments or reactions to any of the discussion? Kung wala naman po, then I think we've exhausted all reactions. And again, Secretary, thank you very much for your time. To the undersecretaries, to the ASECs, of course to the commissioners who took their time out to join us. Thank you very much po. And all to the stakeholders, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. Maraming salamat po.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
In behalf of the Senate, this commission...
Move to suspend.
In behalf of the Senate, this commission is suspended.
On behalf